event is starting. And we're live. Yeah, bring it up whenever.
Hey, let's start the show.
Wow.
Hey, let's start the show.
It's January 15th, 2013. January 16th, 2013. Welcome to This Is Only a Test, the official podcast of Tested.com. Hey guys, I'm Will Smith. Welcome back. Seated directly to my left is Norman Chan.
Welcome back indeed. Second podcast of the year.
Does last week count? It was real fast and in a hotel room.
Of
Dirty.
course it counts. Did it go out on the podcast feed?
It did go out on the podcast feed, which makes it a podcast. It had a number, which makes it a podcast.
196.
Yeah, we're almost at 200. I'm going to give Gary a heads up 3-4 weeks in advance. We'll do an all-star spectacular with just you and me sitting in the room alone, Norm.
All right.
Jeremy Williams is here.
Hi.
Returning after, I guess you were here while I was gone, right?
Yeah, we were here. I was here with Wes on maybe his last podcast.
We had the last
Wes's
podcast,
last podcast
of the year with Jeremy and Wes. It was before we knew it was his last podcast. Thank you, Jeremy, for coming out there. Good podcast.
Thanks for asking me.
So how was it? We didn't last week we got so into CES immediately. We didn't talk about like holidays and business. We didn't take care of the important business of podcasting, which is talking about the stuff that is completely off topic and nonsensical. So, what did you get into over the holiday, Jeremy? Anything exciting?
It's just a blur. I got the two kids, and so it's just getting through it is kind of the goal. And we had the grandparents in town.
Okay.
Does that
help for you? Sometimes the grandparents in town is good for me, and sometimes it's
It all depends on the relationship the grandparents have with the in-law, their in-law.
Okay.
My wife.
Yeah.
And the kids, and so far this is all positive. So.
Okay.
It was a good holiday, but is that when we went go-karting? Because
yes,
we did that.
I don't remember if that was in the new year or not.
It was during the break. It was before the New Year.
Did you go to the fast, like the indoor
fast ones?
The ones with the big motors that they make you put the jumpsuit on and the helmet?
They make you take a class and the whole bit. Yeah, big old motorcycle helmet.
Did you keep your head sock?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Well,
head sock stays.
The question
is
on
the floor.
Do you rent a washed one for $5
Nope.
or buy a new one for $7?
Buy a new one.
Buy a new one every time.
So that's what I did.
Oh, I have the same one. I just keep it in my glove box just in case I want to go karting.
We had a good time.
Or rob a 7-Eleven.
The hole's too big for that.
So
There's
okay,
too much face
here's
visible.
a point of order, and we didn't understand. For the head sock, do you ninja or do you
Astronaut?
Astronaut. That's right.
Oh, what do you mean astronaut?
Should it look like a
does
ninja?
The hole cover
Should you
just
put your whole
eyes,
face through the hole?
or do you astronaut it and make it like a Snoopy cap?
No, it's just the eyes. It covers up the places that the helmet does not show.
That's how we were instructed.
But it was a question because it's
who instructed you on this? Did the guy at the place tell you to do the head?
This was Stapleton's terms.
Oh, well, Stapleton.
Ninja or astronaut.
Ninja is always the way to go.
Difficult. It's difficult to breathe if you're doing ninja, depending on the material of the
You tend to forget this at like 100 scale miles, though.
Yeah,
those are fast go-karts.
Well, and it's much more physical than you expect because they do the thing still where they stand on they put their foot on you and pull the straps down to get you cinched in super tight so you don't wiggle.
Yep.
Oh, well, you got that? My seatbelt was going off.
Oh, really?
The whole time.
Oh no, tighter the better.
Yeah,
because the tighter that you don't
I got a lot of scooching, a lot of been thrown around.
Yeah, so when you have to really brace yourself, and it's not like an oval. It's you turn both directions.
Oh, it's a maze.
Yeah.
You also have to forget everything you know about driving safely.
Do you? Yeah, that's absolutely true. I went with John.
Accelerate into turns.
Well, you're always supposed to accelerate into turns lightly.
Have spinning.
Yeah,
you're not in control unless you're out of control.
Mario Kart rules apply here. You want the ass end of that go-kart to hardly ever be in good friction going around hard corners.
Yeah.
You want to do a 2-point skid the entire time.
As fun as it is to spin out is
Yeah.
actually much slower.
Yeah, it was scary spinning out.
The most dangerous thing about go-karting, and we were going fast and passing people, and it was crazy. And by the way, it was humiliating experience as well as we thought we were doing. There were people there who'd clearly been before, and they just demolished our times. But I think the most
like-
dangerous thing about go-karting is the drive home.
Yeah.
Did you drive home, Norm?
Yeah, I did.
And
It was first feeling very tired, exhausted, and also the adrenaline kind of still being there.
And I'm like thinking I have to pass everybody on the highway.
Yeah, and actually, when you get on 101 out of that place, there's one of those. It's a 270-degree cloverleaf entrance to the freeway,
Right.
And you get on that, and if you're not thinking about it real hard, then you think, well, shit, I can totally get the back wheels loose here and do this much faster. Let's drift this thing. I went with the guy who goes to track days one time, and who we all know, and it was really bad because he was driving like a car. So he was the slow, like he's a person who takes his expensive European sports car up to like what's the
Sonoma.
right, Sonoma Raceway, stuff like that. And he had the worst times by a really huge margin because he was braking going into the turns and accelerating through them and the whole thing. And of course we were drifting by him at wildly out of control.
There's also a time distortion effect because you're paying attention to everything you're doing while driving.
Mm-hmm.
So when you play something, remember when the old days of laser tag, QZAR, you pay back then what felt like a substantial amount of money to play for 15 minutes and went by real fast. And you're like, oh man, I totally wasn't worth it. 15 minutes of go-karting is more than enough. More than enough.
We did the long race once, which was exhausting.
Well, that's what we did. We had the super track.
Yeah.
The super track and 2 races.
Yeah.
And at the end, the last 10 minutes, I just want to end.
I just want to be done.
It's pretty nauseating.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of hard lefts, and you just kind of get numb after a while. I don't understand how people do that for 4 hours.
Yeah, I discovered I have biceps because they hurt the next day.
When I was a kid, my dad wanted to get me a go-kart because we lived on a farm, and
Cool.
you could like having a personal vehicle to drive around in
See,
would be amazing.
Usually, kids want to have a go-kart. They don't have a dad that wants to get them a
Well,
go-kart.
okay, I didn't know what go-karts were at the point my dad wanted to get. My dad wanted to get a go-kart for himself.
I hear you.
Yeah, but my mom wouldn't allow because she was afraid I was going to run under a fence and decapitate myself. So they got a friend who welds to put a big metal steel hoop that's a U shape on the front with a support that lines up directly with the center of my body welded to the frame. And as I'm thinking about this now, as I'm describing this now, it sounds like a terrible idea because what's going to happen when you hit the fence is either the fence going to explode, and that'll be okay, or that's the weld that's holding the back support in place is going to pop off and you're going to impale yourself on this giant metal rod. It was safety first. I always thought go-karts had that U-shaped thing for a long time. I didn't realize that they came without that. I thought that was a requirement for the go-kart.
And then something crazy happened that has never happened
Oh yeah.
during your run, Jeremy.
What happened?
You mean something that's never happened that they'd ever seen?
Yeah. The people running the facility. Had
Now
never
they have a
seen.
no touching rule, but
There-
and it's
Rubbing's
no
racing,
touching.
Jeremy.
it's possible I may have touched somebody else.
Tou- touching is bad in go-kart. It's not bumper cars.
I got a flag that said no bumping, and
Did
so
you this is a safe place, Jeremy. You can tell the truth. Did you bump?
It's possible.
Okay.
And it was lap 1 actually,
Wow.
and then about 2 turns later, I noticed my wheel is like at an angle, and
Did you pit?
And then I stopped, and I realized it was actually falling off. And I thought I'll wave somebody down. They didn't see me, and then I drove as far as I could to the pit.
Okay.
And it totally fell off. I could not drive anymore. The guy looked down at me. Thankfully, I conked out right next to one of the officials, and he looked down at me and said, "Whoa!
Did they stop everybody?
I've
at that
never
point?
seen this before." And then he called a new car for me, which was great. And I got out on the track. He was, telling everybody to be careful. And then I got in the new car, and they'd fixed the old car. But that's
pretty exciting.
That hurt my time.
I gotta imagine that's a real negative impact on your
Yeah, a
performance.
200-second lap. Yeah, it wasn't good.
So this place, when you finish, they give you like lap times and total run times and fastest laps and slowest lap. There's all sorts of cool data. I think it's on a website someplace too. But yeah, it's an interesting experience.
Highly recommended.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Should we talk about? So we have some CES stuff left over from last week that we didn't get to. We have some other stuff that you're familiar with that probably is worth jumping into. So let's just go down the list. Norm, you saw this thing by Avegant. It's a head-mounted display.
Turns out it's called the Glyph, which
Glyph.
Glyph, which I think is not a great name for a product.
So
for what they're trying to sell.
So what it is a head-mounted display. It's not a virtual reality headset. It is a thing to watch movies and video, and maybe use as a monitor or something like that.
This is not the Sony thing.
This is not the Sony thing.
We can talk about the Sony thing also.
But it projects, instead of having a screen in front of you that you see, it's actually projecting light onto your retina that's focused in the right place. So, it works using a custom DLP chip or a new DLP chip.
Were you here when we talked about this, Jeremy?
Yeah, now I remember
Lloyd
this.
was here too. I think it was a Lloyd and Jeremy cast when they came by our offices several months ago to show off an early prototype. And like Will said, it is instead of having a flat screen that with individual pixels that's emitting light or backlight, it is a small DLP projector. So imagine very tiny projectors just piping.
So you wore it?
Yeah, we wore it.
How do you describe what it looks like compared to a small LCD screen?
So it still is a rectangle box, right?
Yeah.
It's not like because it's a projector, the edges fade away.
It doesn't fill your entire
Right.
field of vision.
It's not like that. It still is a rectangular box. They're still doing 45-degree field of view, so it's not all encompassing.
It looks like an 80-inch screen from 10 feet away, which is what they've always said
Sure.
for these head-mounted displays.
But the best way to describe it, the most descriptive thing you can say about it, is the fill factor is bigger than any display you've seen.
What's fill factor?
So if you think about these squares in a LCD or any display, every pixel is a square. The subpixel, every pixel is made up of subpixels, whether it's AMOLED or LCD. In LCD, most traditionally you have RGB subpixels. So if you put a screen under LCD, you will see 3 vertical lines within your square, a red, green, blue, and sometimes you have red, green, blue, white to increase luminance. Sometimes the arrangement of those subpixels won't be rectangular, and so you won't get actual squares. But the subpixels themselves don't actually fill up 100% of that square. You get the illusion of a square because that's how they're arranged.
Well, and they're bright, and the way your vision works, it kind of blurs out when it's at that small size.
But that is what leads to partially to the screen door effect, is just the actual fill factor of an individual pixel. But because it's projected and so it's diffused, like spread out a little bit, and also because they're using these micro mirrors, the fill factor is much higher. So you actually get almost no screen door effect. You actually do not see grids on the image. It's not like you can't see
kind
pixels.
of see pixels, yeah.
I'm not saying you don't see pixels, but you don't see a black, like vertical black lines and horizontal black lines like you would in the original dev kit of the Oculus. You can recognize that there are pixels in perhaps like the aliasing and artifacting. You actually see blocks, and you recognize those are pixels.
But they're perfectly square?
Well, but, I mean, for artifacting blocks, you can see like you know how like when there's fast motion and the edge of someone moving will
think about
have
alias
heavy alias.
Mm-hmm.
You can kind of see that, but they'll be like the colors will kind of blend together. And it's for this reason that projectors, like 2K projectors in a movie theater, look better than a 1080p TV.
That's not quite half the resolution or whatever.
Because a 2K projector, 1920. Projecting at a 80-foot screen, or how many feet a cinema screen is, it's the fill factor is much higher than you would get on a normal 1080p screen.
So the way DLP chips work is, if you don't know at home, is it's just a chip with a bunch of tiny mirrors on it, and there's a light source that projects onto those mirrors. And then each of those mirrors represents 1 pixel. So what they do is, instead of having subpixels to show the different colors, with the DLP, each mirror flips on and off 3 times per frame to show the representative colors. So the light source changes between red, green, and blue. And if it blurs them very fast, then your temporal perception of the color will be, and shows all 3 colors, will be that it's white. If nothing's there, it'll be black, and any combination in between by flipping that mirror on and off at different speeds. So what they do is use an RGB LED light source inside the glasses, project it onto the mirror bounces it back, it focuses on your retina, and theoretically you should be able to see, you get a picture. I would have to put contacts in. My vision correction is such that I couldn't use it without glasses or some sort of vision correction. But the clarity of the picture was really good. There was some artifacting on the demos that they were showing us,
which is a factor of bill rate or a bit rate.
I wasn't sure if it was bit rate. It almost looked like there was an alignment issue between the two eyes because there was a kind of vertical line thing. The projection technology was really neat. Like the image was very crisp and very clear and looked really, really good.
And it was 720p.
It was a 720p source, yeah.
Analogous to.
Yeah, so...
And is that the resolution of the display?
Of the number of actual mirrors.
Yeah, 720p.
Is same number of, equivalent to number of pixels in 720p.
Yeah.
And is it relaxing?
No.
So it's not straining.
I don't know if we used it enough to say that. I was in it for 15 minutes while you did that interview, and I had a headache at the end.
So, also you had alignment problems. You had IPD alignment problems.
We did not go through the alignment process for the demo unit they had at the show was kind of It was difficult to use.
How did they focus the screen?
So
the screen is your retina.
knobs on the bottom, and there's IPD knobs on the top,
Okay,
so you
okay.
can move the placement of the lenses. The problem I had was actually the reason I had a headache. I think was that the screen for my nose position and like eye height, I had to kind of look up constantly out at the top of my field of view to see the screen because it was out of my field of vision otherwise. Which I mean, all this is like this was a handmade prototype. It looked like so.
The bigger thing, in addition to the fill factor, and we talked about this last time we talked about the podcast, is because it's light that's it's not direct light, it's light that's low light bounced. It doesn't look immediately as bright as looking at an LCD.
Yeah.
It's not like resting your eyes on the TV. I don't know how much of that is real though. Like I don't know.
It definitely did not look as glaring.
No, I mean the eye strain related to looking at directly at monitors and TVs versus like for the amount of time you were going to use something like that. I don't know that comes into play. Really.
So you've both used the Sony headset too.
both used the Sony.
I've used the Sony one and the Zeiss one.
I used to own the Sony one,
Yeah.
and I thought it was interesting. It gave you perfect 3D because each eye had its own screen.
Mm-hmm.
But besides that, it wasn't comfortable enough for me to watch a whole movie on.
No, and not even like a TV show. Half
It's
an
too
hour.
heavy.
Is this better?
No, this
We
thing
didn't
was
use
enormous.
it for more than.
Okay.
We didn't use it for more than 15 minutes.
It was really heavy.
They're targeting, I think, like 12 ounces, I think is what they're saying. Their design also lets you flip down and up the visor, so it's a headphone. It's a headphone set. Like
you rotate
audio is
the
built in,
headphones like this.
and then the visor comes down over your eyes, and then you can flip it up if you just want to listen to music, but whatever.
I don't like. I thought the technology was really cool. The projector was really cool. I don't know who buys head-mounted displays these days.
This is Jeremy.
I know Jeremy does.
Jeremy, you're actively you're asking like someone at Best Buy, like, I have these Sony ones that I got a couple years ago.
Yep.
How's the technology now? I want to watch these TVs on the couch. They're really the interesting thing is they're really selling it for mobile. So they really wanted this to be a display. A $500 is starting price for when they launched their Kickstarter. They wanted to be a display that you plug your Android or iPhone into, and they plugged an iPhone into and played a racing game, and the game looked much better using this display than just staring at the iPhone. Way more comfortable. I mean, there's a lot
Well,
of
and your thumbs didn't block the screen and
your
all
head
that stuff,
weren't
too.
tilting down, and so they want people to sit on their couches, watch movies, and
Right.
play mobile games, having this thing plugged in.
Regardless if this is the one or not, I still think the projector technology is extremely exciting because this is the beginning of replacing real world light sources with alternate light sources in a way that looks, like real virtual reality.
Yeah, I mean, as the technology gets better, this will go from being a thing that looks kind of ridiculous and huge to being something like a Geordie LaForge visor you just slam on to a pair of glasses that just blast straight in your eyeball.
And that's how we look at every prototype product.
Yeah, I mean,
At CES.
Like you said, whether this product lives or dies, who knows? But the technology's neat, and it's something I'd never seen before. Okay, so you also spent a little bit of time with the Sony HMD that they. So what's the story? So this thing is basically the second generation of that third generation of that HMD that Jeremy had, that we have in the office here, that we used for that third person camera a few years ago, and they slapped a motion tracker on the back.
That's it.
Okay.
That was absolutely it.
So is it not
It's exactly the same HMD, HMZ, TM 3. And of course, they have like a one letter for different regions.
Yeah.
And then in the back, where you strap your head close to it, is a small 1-inch by 2-inch motion tracker, Bluetooth connected, and
So what's it for?
because that is a quote unquote self-contained unit. It is for playing games and watching. You know what? Head tracking. A lot of people said they're great for looking at panoramas. So people take panoramic photos, or there have been Google Street View style panoramic photos. It's very easy to stitch these together. And traditionally, like on the PC, you have like a Flash player or some QuickTime player, and or some web plugin, and you drag a mouse and look around. But if you can, because
So it's
those
like
run
that
on
Wii U
phones,
thing where you hold up the remote and you look around and you're like, oh, I'm inside
it's
my
not
Street
not
View.
exactly augmented reality, but in terms of like looking at panoramic video and photos, because you can do panoramic video now. I think that's what this is for.
So
I mean, obviously they want to say games.
can you
but
play PlayStation 4, PS3 games on it?
Sure.
They,
Well, not with motion tracking, but
they said that Sony said that they want people to be able to play games eventually on this. But this demo, this prototype, was made for video.
well, the motion tracking wouldn't work, but you can plug HDMI into it. And it
Right.
works fine.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
That sounds terrible.
The Oculus Rift has shown us that if you give us a wide enough field of view, GUI elements and UI elements all stop working. Because they're too far off into the extremes.
The dev kit did.
Well,
We'll talk about that in a minute.
But I'm saying I'm not saying because of legibility. I'm saying that they're too far off to the sides.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So you have to restructure all of your UI and GUI. So the one benefit of this Sony headset, regardless if the head tracking works or not, but eventually when it does work with everything, is nothing will have to be changed. It will you can play games as is
That's true.
out of the box.
And to go back to the Avigant thing, that is the exact reason that they claim that they are going for 45-degree field of view because existing video won't need to be changed and reshot, and you can watch existing Blu-rays and 16:9 movies or 29:9 movies with their hardware. The content is there.
The only problem for me is that the 80-inch screen at 10 feet metaphor that the 45-degree field of view gives you is kind of underwhelming. Like I when I put that on my head, and it's not just the Avigant, it's the old Sony thing, it's the new Sony things, it's every one of them I've ever tried. I'm kind of underwhelmed. Like it does not feel like it does not mimic a large screen theater experience as I would expect a 10-foot screen at 10 feet away to do. So, and also they're expensive. $500 for that is bananas, I think. Because it's like, I don't know.
Do you know how much the Sony headset is?
It's $1,000.
It's $1,000.
Yeah, no, I know. With the motion tracking?
No, the one they sell right now, third generation, is $1,000.
And it's crazy uncomfortable.
Yeah, too heavy. The third generation one even?
It's
well, I don't know.
It's a lot
looked a lot lighter.
They don't look any better. It doesn't like they've improved it dramatically. The first one anyway, when it rested on my nose, it was just horrible.
It's front heavy, and they have 2 straps in the back.
Yeah,
that's
I had
how
to
bad it
order
is.
new like padded straps from Japan or China.
A top strap?
Probably China. Yeah, in order to make it
Usable
wearable
at all. Yeah, I really liked that one that they had the first year that they demoed that, where you walked up to a console and they had just an articulated arm with it floating there. So you'd walk up and just jam your face into the hole. That was awesome.
Yeah.
Not very practical for most normal people. Let's see. There were a lot of 4K UHD TVs. We didn't really talk about the real problem with 4K and UHD on last week's show.
Well, what's the real problem with 4K UHD?
Hey, Norm, how much do you like House of Cards and Orange is the New Black?
I have not seen Orange is the New Black, but I love House of Cards.
Is it? How much would you like to see that in the best way that you could possibly see House of Cards and Orange is the New Black? The highest possible resolution, the most fidelity imaginable.
I think more detail could always be used. I think that Netflix streaming right now, 720p, I would rather. It's why I buy Blu-rays still, because I want the higher bitrate.
Yeah,
because I want more image there. If I'm watching Game of Thrones, yes, I'll watch the first night on HBO or HBO Go, but I'll rewatch it in Blu-ray because that's where the effects are added.
Yeah, like I watched. Well, okay, go back. We'll get to that in a minute. The only pieces of 4K content that we are aware of existing in a way that people can get to them are via Sony's proprietary streaming service or Netflix original content that is streaming in 4K. So that's Orange is the New Black and House of Cards, I think, right now. They have 4K deals that'll probably involve movies at some point in the future. But given kind of what's happened to Netflix's library over the holiday season and the way that the studios seem to be backing away from them, I don't know how ready they're going to be to put 4K streaming on. And there's no broadcast standard. There's no disc standard. There's no streaming standard. Like, as near as I can tell, the only way to get 4K, sorry, it's not even 4K, it's UHD. UHD is what it's called for home TV use. 4K is what they call it when it's used in theaters and for professionals.
Same resolution?
No, 4K, it's different aspect ratios, same vertical resolution, basically. So UHD is the 16 by 9, and 4K is 2.35 to 1 or 1.69 to 1 or something, whatever the normal movie resolution is. There's no content. That's the problem. You're spending $10,000 on a TV, or at the end of this year, probably $1,000 on a Vizio, but there's nothing to watch on it.
You know where there is content?
Where
on the desktop, on the internet.
YouTube?
YouTube, yes, technically has 4K, but I'm just saying, I could use more pixels on my desktop right now.
For your monitor.
Oh, you mean as a
monitor.
computer
Yeah.
monitor.
Yeah.
And those aren't that expensive.
Well,
Is that untrue?
Oh, I didn't put that on the list.
so Dell late last year announced 2 4K monitors.
Yeah. $600 maybe?
Well, the two they announced late last year were the ones that were bigger. I think they announced a 24-inch 4K monitor and a 32-inch 4K monitor.
I thought it was a 27.
I think 27. Yeah.
27 is a new one they announced this year, but they announced a 24-inch and a 32-inch last year.
The 32-inch is crazy expensive,
and
right?
they're both crazy expensive.
But they're like content creator monitors.
Sure. And the one they announced this year, which they promised would be under $1,000, ended up, like you said, being $600, and that is a 27-inch. But it is 30 hertz.
Ouch.
Really?
30 hertz only.
Is that confirmed?
It is confirmed.
At 4K?
At 4K.
Does it have a scaler? Can you plug in HDMI and stuff to it? Or is it just DisplayPort?
No, you can plug in whatever you want in it.
Okay.
But 30 hertz, and all of them are TN panels, which is not as big a deal. But there are definitely people out there that hate TN panels on some forms. Like, those garbage in the trash. Like, I can't believe they're.
I saw some Korean monitors that are now 4K for like $500.
I think they're the same deal, though. I think they're 30 hertz. That's the problem with them.
Yeah,
30
sucks.
hertz.
30 hertz is. I mean, we're talking about flat panels, so it's not like there's a scan refresh. Does it matter?
If you're playing games, it does.
Oh, right, because they're locked to the. Yeah, okay. Yeah, that would be bad. Okay.
And even moving a mouse around.
The 32-inch one is $3,500.
That's insane. For a TN panel, it's not IPS for $3,500.
I'm not sure about the 32-inch.
I gotta imagine at that money, it's an IPS panel.
I don't think they can do IPS
at that density.
At that resolution and
wow.
Can I make a point back to there's no 4K content? The one reason I'm considering a 4K TV now is because, and I realize this fad has passed, but I'm, as you know, a 3D fan, and I like passive 3D. I don't like active 3D.
Okay.
So the nice thing about 4K passive TVs is they give you the full horizontal resolution.
Right. You can do double vertical resolution. One eye gets one side, one eye gets the other, and you have enough lines to do it.
The problem with 1080p sets with passive is you lose half of that. You only get 1920 by 512.
So there was a fair amount of...
whatever. Yeah.
1080. Yeah. 540.
Right. Thank you.
There's been a fair amount of research that says that's not actually the case.
What do you mean?
That the way your brain combines the two fields
I
is such
understand,
that the cognitive
you're getting
is no
the other
difference.
one.
Yeah, you see both, even though you don't actually see both.
Nonetheless, clearly at 4K, you definitely get everything.
Yeah, it just makes you feel better.
Yeah.
Okay.
Did you guys read Marco Arment's piece about what he thinks Apple will do with a
TV
with a 4K monitor?
No.
So we'll have to walk through the logic of this. If you remember with
this is a cinema display is what he's talking about, or
sure,
iMac
how
display,
Apple
whatever.
will do 4K.
Okay.
So with the MacBook Air or MacBook Retina, the first Retina laptop display, what you had was, and I had to think of, what was the resolution again? It was basically
quad whatever the 15-inch laptop was before. It's like it ends up being like 1600 by It's 1600 by 900 times by 2, right?
So
3200 by
3200
or 1800.
Uh,
Keep talking. All
yes. But basically, you're taking the what was previously the 15-inch resolution, laptop resolution, and
2880 by 1800.
right, which is mathematically 1440 by 900 pixel doubled, right? And a lot of people didn't like that because you don't actually get more screen real estate when you do pixel doubling. Yes, text is sharper, everything is sharper because you're doing the pixel doubling, but because it's still mimicking the desktop's 1440 by 900, you can't fit more windows in. Right? You're not going to see more of a web page. You're going to see sharper text.
You get better density, but not more space.
But not more space.
You can turn on that with mods.
You can even turn it on in the control panel.
Oh, can you now?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
And certain programs, like if you can run Lightroom or Aperture, and you will get your full image resolutions. Right?
Like Final Cut, the video display window shows a 1080p video inside the
as opposed to some
frame,
doing
even
some
though it's
pixel
smaller,
doubling.
yeah.
But there were other video settings, display settings on those laptops that let you simulate more desktop space. For example, if you wanted to see a 1920 by 1080 simulated desktop, right? But it wouldn't be pixel per pixel accurate, so you get the dithering. But the way they did that was they actually render twice 1920 by 1080. So they pixel doubled that and then downsampled, as opposed to upsampling from 1440 by 900. So the performance on a 1920, when you're running the 1920 by 1080 mode, is actually much worse than if you're running native.
Right, 25.
Native
But they did it because every frame was cleaner.
Cleaner,
Yeah.
right? Overall, but it's the trick is you're pixel
Yep.
doubling first and then scaling down to instead of scaling up.
Yep.
Which
Okay.
is it's the right way to do it.
I think they've changed the way graphics cards works as a result of that on Intel's integrated graphics, at least.
So what is Apple going to do with a 4K display?
So the argument is that they can do a 4K monitor, release it, and just do exactly that for your desktop, and it would be a 1920 by
1080 times 2.
1080 panel, scaled up and then scaled back down to 4K resolution. Does that
So
make sense?
what are your no. I think you whiffed this one, dude.
Why are they scaling it up and then down again for 4K?
Well, yeah, if it's a quad resolution 1920 by 1080 panel,
which is the normal display,
yeah.
right? So you get a 38.
Well, no, on a 27-inch monitor, it's like 2560 by
right. So you
1600 or
don't
something.
get 2560 on a 27-inch monitor, which is the Ultra HD resolution is 38. What is it? 38.
30. It's 1920 times 2.
Exactly. So what you're getting is 1920 pixel doubled.
Okay.
Is the normal display.
Yep.
So you're going to look at a 27-inch monitor, but it'll look like
1080
in terms of how big your web
Pixel
pages are.
doubled, yeah.
But for people who want to still have it look like 2560 by 1440,
Would people want that?
I think that's what on a 27-inch and 30-inch display. That's what we're used to now in terms of how big windows are.
I think most people don't have
Then-
27 and 30-inch monitors.
A lot of people who work. I see out of 4 monitors in this room, 2 of them are that.
That's
But yes, I mean they're affordable. I mean
They are more affordable now than ever before.
you can buy a 2560 by 1440 monitor for under $500,
That's true.
around $500, and I think that a lot of people who are going to buy a 27-inch monitor, if it's 4K, are going to want to have those pixel, or want to have that screen space. Then Apple will just do that, double the 2560 by 1440, and then
Maybe.
scale scale down just like they did on the laptop.
Yeah. That would be consistent.
That would be consistent. So that instead of having to do a 2560 by 1440 pixel doubled, which would be insane.
I think
terms
my
of
eyes are
consistency.
crossed.
Just give me 4K. I just want 4K native or 1920 doubled.
So what kind of TV do you have now that you're thinking about upgrading?
Oh, it's a 5-year-old Samsung.
So, okay.
55-inch LCD. It's fine.
120 hertz?
The fact that I would ever complain about this TV is just absurd.
Okay.
It's not even first world problem. It's just idiot problem.
Is 120 hertz? Does that matter?
I turn all that stuff off. It does
Yeah,
not matter to me. I hate that stuff.
It matters when you're doing. It's not a 3D TV, I guess.
No,
since
it's not.
5 years old.
And I don't think anyone should buy a 3D TV. I think 120 hertz
It's well established.
absolutely does not matter.
Well, yeah. So who knows? It remains to be seen if I'm going to do it or not. But
120 hertz matters if you're doing 24. Why does 120 hertz matter?
I thought you needed 240 hertz for.
Yeah,
the
you're
good,
right.
The good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
120
that doesn't do a whole lot.
Nope.
Although if you're doing passive 3D, it doesn't matter because it's whatever. It's not like you have to run double the frame rate or something.
3D
Right.
should not care.
Yeah. So I watched 3D movies over the holiday.
At home?
Yeah, at home. Gina wasn't around. She'd gone to Tennessee with the Munchers
Wow.
to see family, and
What'd you watch it on? TV?
TV.
Okay.
And she never wants to wear the glasses, and you have to do it late at night when everything's completely dark around you because the glare problem really messes up the 3D.
Active shutter.
Active shutter. So I put on the active shutter glasses in a dark room, and I watched Pacific Rim in 3D, which is a much better experience than watching Pacific Rim in 2D. I watched Star Trek Into Darkness, which did not help that movie at all. What else did I watch? I watched basically all the Blu-ray. I watched maybe Nemo. I want to say I watched Finding Nemo.
Yeah.
And something else. I don't remember what the last thing was. Anyway,
You really binged.
yeah. Well, I had 2 nights to myself in the house. It was rare. So
Wow.
I went
Finding
deep.
porn in 3D.
I didn't look for porn in. I don't want. I'm all.
If you're by yourself and you're experimenting in 3D, you might as well go full spectrum.
I don't want. I found that increased fidelity with porn is a negative most of the
It's not
time.
about fidelity. It's about immersion.
You don't want to see. You
Don't you
wanna-
wanna get immersed?
I don't want that full 3D.
The that last Transformers film is pretty good in 3D. I gotta say.
I think we saw that in the theater in 3D. So I'm never going to watch that movie again.
I watched it at home in 3D, and I was impressed by the 3D.
I'd have to have paid money for it. What was the other thing I watched? The last thing I watched was really good.
Life of Pi?
No, I should have watched that.
No, that's killer. That's the best.
I don't know if I got the
best
3D.
ever, but except maybe the Pixar short, Night and Day.
9 Days is the best 3D.
Night and Day is the one with the clouds.
No,
That's partly
that's partly
cloudy.
cloudy. No, Night and Day is the one where it's two-dimensional characters, and you see through them into a 3D space, and they represent daytime and nighttime of the same world, and they overlap, and they're showing off what their versions.
What was
of the
that
world
before?
is.
Ratatouille or something?
I
Or
don't
was it more
remember.
recent?
I don't remember. I
It
don't
was more
remember.
recent.
I'll have to find that. 'Cause
It was the one before Brave.
It's not in 3D. You can't get it in 3D.
Oh.
It's only in the theater. Yeah.
That's
Sad.
my favorite. That's my favorite bonus
Toy
feature on
Story- Toy
Pixar
Story
discs.
3.
What's that?
That's my favorite bonus feature on Pixar discs. Is that the short that they run before
Yeah.
the movie in the theater is always on the disc.
It's true, and I own both Pixar shorts Blu-rays, so you can
Yeah.
get them.
And they're all-
by
yeah, one
themselves.
collection.
There are books
too.
about just the shorts.
Yeah.
If you want to.
Well, the shorts are a beta test, right? I always assume that's where they're
They
like
used to
testing
be.
new
They
stuff.
certainly used to be, but now they're more like beta tests for directors.
They're yes. And Pixar or Disney does the same thing, like the Paperman stuff.
Paperman was
Which
great.
was great.
Yeah. So the Night and Day was John Lasseter saying we still love traditional 2D animation, and so we want to kind of find a way to merge these things.
Mm-hmm.
But you're right. It is a way. One, it keeps people employed because it is a lot of rendering and a lot of artists.
Yeah.
And not everyone's working on a movie at the same time. I know Pixar just closed their Vancouver studio.
Yeah.
I want to say, but it is a way to get directors into the pipeline to work on future projects. Pixar has no new movie this year.
I know.
No new Pixar movie.
That's right.
Which is a good thing.
What did they
can hold
have one
back.
last year? Brave.
No, the Cars 2.
No, Cars 2 was
No.
the year before, dude.
No,
Cars
yeah.
2 is old.
Oh, maybe Brave. then.
Monsters.
Oh, Monsters
University.
Monsters U, which I
Okay.
still haven't seen. Yeah,
I have that on disc at
you
home.
know, and that's fine. And I think Disney's okay with that because Frozen is making gangbusters. money.
is a huge movie.
I haven't seen that yet.
You should take the kids.
Apparently, it's well worth watching.
Yeah, Peter, my son's seen it. He went to a
Okay.
party, so and he's been playing the hit song from it on YouTube nonstop.
the hit song from it
Are you kidding?
on YouTube.
Yeah.
that says everything about
Yeah.
where you are as both a parent
Yep.
and where your son is as a child of this generation.
That's the new future,
Playing
man.
the hit song on YouTube constantly, searching with Google Voice. Oh my goodness,
Dude, you should not buy a 4K TV this year
I hear you.
because they will be so much better in 2 years when there's actually stuff to watch on
probably
them.
shouldn't buy a 4K monitor this year either.
You might be right.
4K monitor might be the thing to buy this year.
There's so many
It'll be
things I
much
want to
cheaper
buy.
next year, and more people making
That's
them.
true. So we saw the Steam controller. We talked about that a little bit. There's been I was on Idle Thumbs this week and talked to Chris Remo and Jake and Sean, who've all used it more than we have. Like when they did that developer tour day, they brought it, and I think they all got to try it. And it got some interesting. So Chris played some Double Fine adventure games on it and was like, this is a perfectly viable way to play mouse games, mouse heavy games on the couch.
So Steam Dev Days is going on right now.
That's happening now. Something I assume that by the time this is posted, we will be behind and there will be something interesting.
Well, they
posted from
announced
Dev
Steam
Days.
VR.
We knew that already. That happened earlier this week. It's on the list already.
Yes, and also every developer there got a Steam controller.
Yes.
Whoa.
Prototype.
Yeah.
Cool.
That makes sense. The Oculus VR, the VR big picture mode is what it is. So basically what it does is projects, I haven't tried it yet, but it's in the beta channel, and it projects the Steam big picture mode as if it was an 80-inch screen 10 feet in front of you. So you know, just like a lot of UI elements in Oculus games do, it seems like.
Totally illegible text, I assume.
I would bet on the dev kit it's probably pretty gnarly unless they jacked up the font a ton. It's on the list to talk about. We used the Crystal Cove prototype at CES.
All right, I'm booking the next 20 minutes.
So we talked about this last week.
Crystal Cove
I don't know about
with Jeremy.
Okay.
Because this, I don't care about anyone else's opinion except Jeremy's when it comes to
I just
consumer Oculus.
Can I please just get your thumb up, thumb down feelings for the future of the Steam controller? Do you think it's got promise?
I don't.
Thumbs sideways.
Sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, you've used you used the Space Orb and the Cyberman. You know how that stuff works. You have to sit down with it and use it to play actual games in a real environment.
It's going to take a lot of
gonna know.
customization, obviously, on the developer side.
I mean, the good news is I think that the software. I'm not sure about that. I like looking at the stuff that they had that you could program to set macros and stuff and configure it, and the fact that they're tying it into that Steam community stuff where you can share all that stuff really easily and
that sounds
vote
like a lot of
on it and all that.
compensating for. Yeah. They'll call it customization, but it sounds like that
Crowdsourcing.
Well, no. It's not something. Not lack of intuitiveness.
Yeah.
If you have to personalize it yourself, and that to some extent, personalizing it is great if it works great for you. I think the bigger problem is that it is a control mechanism that people are not going to be designing games for. What it is it's a crutch to make up for keyboard mouse, and that is it's designed for that.
My hope was that it was a home run crutch,
and it is not a home run crutch because using it for 15 minutes, if it was a home run crutch, we would be able to tell that.
Okay.
I mean, here's the thing though. The thing that's changed between now and the last time that that kind of weird keyboard mouse replacement controller was a thing in the late 90s and early 2000s is that one, it's really easy to share information much more so than before. It's not like in the old days where you have to download the FLCS configuration file for your joystick and rudders and shit, and then type all that stuff into an INI file in Notepad and like hope that you didn't put a comma in the wrong place or else it'll stop working. Now I just go to Steam Community and say, oh, I want to use Norm's configuration for this, which also means that they can do this, and Valve, I'm sure, for the top 1,000 games on the service that this is going to apply to, will go down the list of games, test out the 5 most popular things, and say, okay, this is the one we bless. Like, they have to do that. The other thing that's changed is that everybody now acknowledges the benefit of having a universal control scheme, because the prevalence of the Xbox 360 controller for PC gaming has completely changed the ability to use a gamepad on PC games.
So
like,
think of it
a
from
strong positive.
A game developer's perspective. If you're a game developer, you're developing a cross-platform game. Let's say a shooter, for example. You're designing with a few control schemes in mind. You're designing for gamepad, obviously, if your game's going to come out on a next-gen console, and gamepad is relatively easy to design for, but you're actually designing a game to suit the movements for gamepad. And then you're also designing for keyboard mouse because your game's going to come out on PC. You're not designing for Steam Controller. Steam Controller isn't a new paradigm for how you're going to play games. It's just supposed to be the best crutch, leaning toward for keyboard mouse, not on the gamepad side. And I think the very fact that it is, and we may be wrong, maybe Valve's going to make a big push for developers to develop for Steam Controller, and maybe there will be some indie games that work.
They're having a dev conference for the first time ever right now,
perfectly for Steam Controller, but that's not going to be the big market. The big market is game consoles and also PCs for keyboard and mouse. The best crutch is still going to be crutch.
I mean, I'm going to go ahead and tell you a secret about Valve is that they seem to take the long view. Like if you look at
Valve time.
the birth of Steam and how that started out as, hey, here's a way to get your Counter-Strike patches without cheating, to foil the cheaters, all the way up through, hey, this is the only place to get PC games that anybody takes seriously on the on the internet. And then look at what they're doing with the SteamOS stuff and the Steam Box. They are, just to be clear, they are releasing a Linux-based console that will have 250 titles, most of which are indie stuff that the mainstream audience doesn't give a shit about. So, like, they're clearly taking the long view on the SteamOS stuff and the Steam hardware stuff. I think that the controller is the long view too. And unlike everybody else that's ever released this kind of controller, they actually have the patience to wait 2 years for people to start making games for this thing and to push them to do that and to give them money and encourage them.
It's a safe buy regardless. I mean, you're not going to be forced to use a controller. If it ends up being comparable pricing to a game controller, $50, maybe more because that's a touchscreen, like $60. They're going to sell a ton of them because people are going to want to be curious.
And they also have the power of doing the thing where they say, okay, guys, if you pay $60 for a Steam controller, we're going to give you Half-Life 3 2 weeks before everybody else. Which, guess what? Suddenly the installed base of Steam controllers has gone from very low to, worth talking about.
Half-Life 3 announced here. You heard it first.
Gabe told me that at that event on last Monday. Okay, so Oculus Crystal Cove. I don't think we should run through the. Jeremy, how much do you know about this?
Everything.
Okay.
There are a lot of things. Yeah, Jeremy knows everything.
High points are that they added positional tracking. It's a 1080p OLED screen with much lower.
They didn't say the resolution, did they?
They said it to us off camera, and they said, well, it's okay because they said it went online.
It's not a secret.
It's not a secret.
Yeah.
Cool. So that was just 1080p.
Yes.
I thought maybe more.
No, and I don't think they'll do maybe more. A lot of people are like, oh, you can get 7-inch 1440p panels, but because of the low persistence and the way they're getting low persistence vision and the frame rates that they have to run the game at to compensate for that, they can't expect that everyone's going to have a computer to run a game at 1440 at 120 frames per second to play an Oculus game. They did have the LCD 1080p panels on the show floor at CES that we did not know about at the Intel booth. So if I
those are the same ones that were at PAX, right?
E3, I guess PAX.
Yeah.
Because
the pink eye ones.
We didn't get to compare, and I would have wanted to, had we known that, would have tried those out before going into the demo to refresh what 1080p looked like on LCD. Because I only got, again, 15 minutes with that last year at E3.
So but the high points on this are the positional tracking. So it's not just your orientation; it's where your head is in space, and then the stuff that they've done to reduce latency on the display side. So that 1080p display that we saw at E3 last year, there was noticeable ghosting and motion trails and stuff like that when you turned your head, and the impact was pretty strongly negative.
So I don't know if that could be best described as latency.
The ghosting, right?
But definitely ghosting.
Ghosting.
It is the ghosting. Persistence of vision is ghosting.
Was that ghosting more noticeable in that prototype than it is in the DK1?
You mean you're talking about
dev kit?
Yeah.
I thought it was more noticeable in the prototype at E3.
Okay.
Because
that
that's
would make
exactly
sense.
the prototype that I did not have enough time with.
I see.
To compare.
Because I feel like a lot of people are making the leap from that prototype, which most normals like me have not seen.
Right.
So the dev kit doesn't have terrible ghosting. It's not horrible. Obviously, legibility is an issue, but that's more of a resolution problem. So it seems like
it's also a FOV problem too, because the problem is when those pixels get distorted going through the optics, then you only have focus on text in the very center of the image.
Yeah.
Having used DK1 more recently, like notably in Octobercast, the ghosting is dramatically reduced compared to DK1.
Really?
From in the new OLED. That low persistence stuff really matters.
I can't
Yeah,
wait.
it made a huge difference.
Wait to see this.
I don't know. I mean, can't say night and day, but it is immediately noticeable.
It was
when you were shaking your head.
Yeah.
Now the whole idea of this low persistence is the light is on for a split second and then shut off, and you have black pixels until it gets new information when they turn it on again. So the display is actually off more often than on.
Correct.
But it's on enough for your eyes to have that persistence.
It has to do with your refresh rate too.
A factor of refresh rate a factor of frame rate of the game.
Yeah.
Probably more frame rate than refresh rate.
But refresh rate being assuming 60 hertz.
Yeah.
They probably want to lock them, I would think.
They
right?
said it was a faster frame rate than 60 hertz. Though.
Yes, so you have to overcompensate with the frame rate.
Yep.
Because if you have if the frame rate isn't like v-synced up and at a certain multiple, then the off is going to be not synced up.
You'll have tearing and bad stuff.
Using OLED, you allow also the sub 1 millisecond of the pixel refresh time, which is separate than refresh rate. Also, that's just the time it takes so the pixel will change colors, and then also the strobing of the light. So 4 things combined.
So the thing that they do with the Crystal Cove prototype that's new is, if you think about it, when the game draws a screen and it's correct at the time you draw the screen, then you move your head a fraction of a millisecond later and it's incorrect. So what they're doing now is they turn off at the moment it's incorrect, the pixels turn off. It's not exactly strobing, they said, but it's
the same concept.
Same kind of concept, yeah. So that when you turn your head, the moment you start moving, the incorrect pixels go away, and you don't see any more pixels until the data is correct again. And then those go away the moment they're incorrect, and so on and so forth down the line.
But this is completely transparent to your brain. Your brain sees a solid image.
It just looks really, really crisp.
Yeah, so you do not see flickering. And with strobing, you get flickering if it's strobed at a
Are you sensitive to flickering on like DLP TVs and stuff like that, Norm?
If I move, I see the rainbow effect very noticeably.
So I never saw that before, and it's good to hear that you do see that.
It'd be interesting to take one of these screens and hold it in your hand and do this. Because I bet at some point you'd probably be able to see the flickering.
We'll put the high-speed camera on it when we get one.
Well, a high-speed camera certainly, but I bet even the human eye. The nice thing about what they're doing is they have the thing strapped to your face, so any movement is locked. Is the screen locked to the
and
axis
a lot
of
of
your
the
head.
a lot of the flickering stuff, the rainbow effect stuff happens like what you said. If you
that's
if you
DLP.
I mean the flickering stuff.
But it's the same sensitivity
because you're also looking at a screen with the world around you. But like you said, because all you see is the screen and
it's
your brain
locked
is
to your
locked
movements.
to that, then it's less noticeable.
Well, the other thing is your peripheral vision is much more sensitive to flickering than the core. So by having you in the goggles, you don't have your peripheral vision is effectively obscured by the kind of dive mask design of that headset.
And they tweaked the optics too, right? So
the optics were huge.
So
inside it.
More is now in focus. Is that the idea?
It seemed like you know how when you're putting on the dev kit, there's kind of a sweet spot where you get it lined up just right. It seemed there was much less fiddling to get that sweet spot right. And I'm not sure. Like again, we had 15 minutes with it and put it on twice, so that could be because like I'm better at putting on those goggles now. I know how to do it, but the optics were noticeably like probably 30 to 50% larger.
And isn't the screen now physically closer to your eyes?
Not sure about that.
I think they said it was.
There were interviews after the one we did that came out after that had new information. Reddit did an incredible interview. You watched that video, right?
Yep.
Which they were very frank about a DK2 possibly coming out.
A second
dev kit, which maybe would, and DK2 would have positional tracking, would have low persistent vision,
and higher resolution
DK2 might be close.
It will be at least what you guys just saw.
At least what we saw, and could we don't know the spacing between DK2 and CV, consumer version, but
why don't we just use the words instead of the bad acronyms?
I'm just talking Oculus speak. If you watch the interview, that's all they did. There was DK1, DK2.
We speak human here.
I want to be like Nate and Palmer.
Okay,
they're so cool.
Wow, Norm.
We just don't know where between the second developer kit and the consumer, second developer kit or Crystal Cove and consumer, that the second developer kit's going to land.
I mean, but that makes sense because they need to have something prior to release of consumer version that people who are making games, presumably timed to launch with the consumer version, can test their final builds on and stuff like that. So you don't have the the iPhone 5 problem.
They also said that independent of a mass release DK2 developer kit version 2, because they have specific partnerships with developers, if developers request certain things, they can make prototypes for the developers. And so even if developer kit comes very close to consumer release or not enough time, a bit lead time to get, there have been plenty of developers who have already had access to at least Crystal Cove quality prototypes, which they had at least four of
at the show.
So it's not like yes, they're hand built, but it's not like they only had the one or two.
That frame that had all the IR LEDs in it was 3D printed.
Yes, I mean I'm sure they're 3D
yeah.
printing still a ton
Interesting.
of that stuff.
Yeah.
We don't know if the IR LEDs are flickering, and if the camera is tracking just position of the IR LEDs.
It's just tracking the grid or
it can actually identify the individual LEDs through the flickering of LEDs, which motion trackers, when you're talking about like movies, they actually do.
or Cast AR for that matter.
Yes, and Cast AR. They also, a lot of people asked whether it looked like the Crystal Cove was heavier, front heavy, and they answered that the Crystal Cove that prototype had a lot of empty space between the screen and the edge, just because they had to move the panel and do wiring work, and so
the final version will be smaller.
more compact.
Now, I didn't realize that those LEDs were infrared. That makes sense.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it looks like a cheap 30 FPS camera, infrared camera, or a camera without a IR filter that can see it. So a lot of it's just the software.
And I understand that it doesn't get full 180 degrees. It loses you at 180.
So you can see where the position of the LEDs go on a frame that almost looks like it clips on the outside of the old dev kit, and they're on the sides, the top, and the front. I don't think there were any on the bottom. I was doing like Top Gun / Battlestar Galactica pilot moves in Eve Valkyrie, where I was flipping my head around back to back to see behind me, and because of the positional tracking, you can actually lean out over off of your shoulder and look out like behind the center post of the fighter, which was pretty awesome. And I was going as fast as I could without giving myself whiplash, and it worked fine.
Reminds me of Norm driving the truck for 2 hours, and when he would turn his head, he'd look out the window. But now he could actually do that.
Right, it's not simulated in game.
You could look out going frontwards.
You can actually with Euro Truck Simulator, rotational head movement in the game, it took that to mean that you were looking out the window, so your it faked the positional tracking. But here you actually get one-to-one positional tracking of looking, maybe not completely behind you, because I don't know if the IR will track the full 360, but at least 180 degrees.
From some of the interviews I saw, they did say it does lose you at about 180, but it falls back to the standard accelerometer gyro sensor, so it's not bad. I mean, it then recatches you on the way back.
And one of the things they talked about was that using all this stuff together, using the infrared camera and the gyros and accelerometer together gives them another point of data, which helps them make the whole thing. It works as a holistic whole rather than individual components.
The other thing that they confirmed in that Reddit interview, I don't think anyone else asked, was they will have wider field of vision in consumer version. What we saw, whether it's
vertical
optics,
or horizontal?
Horizontal.
Okay.
It will be more than 110 degrees.
Because right now it's like looking through a dive mask. That's the best analogy I've seen for that. So you see, I'm holding my hands up in front of my eyes, but if you make C's with your hands and put them up to your eyeballs, that's pretty much what you see.
At least with the original dev kit, it's enough to convince you that you're immersed.
It's pretty good.
But they're going to go for even more immersion.
You're right. There's like a mask where you see this black peripheral.
Yeah. But you kind of tune it out immediately. I think it's totally acceptable even in the dev kit. More is always better. The other thing they talked about was that they took a $75 million round of funding, which it sounds like they're going to use to publish games.
It sounds most certainly like they're going to develop and publish games.
Yeah. So
just short of saying that John Carmack was going to make like a game. He said John's very interested in making games.
And in my last podcast of the year, this was one of my wishes.
Was John Carmack would
make games?
Would not just develop hardware, firmware, but that he would actually do some game stuff.
John's working on some stuff, and he really wants to make games, so they didn't want to announce anything.
They got to lead the charge. They got to show what VR games can and should do.
The first time I met him was when we were talking about... I don't remember what we were talking about. We ended up talking about Snow Crash. And this was probably 10 years after Snow Crash came out, so he was super... Like that is a dream that he has lived for a long time, it seems like. So I got the strong feeling that they're treating this as a platform, like another platform for PC gaming. Seems like Valve is probably going to announce their own headset at Dev Days this week, maybe, or maybe at GDC or E3.
Well, I don't know about that.
I've heard
Jonathan Blow recently said in an interview that the Valve headset is far and away the best VR experience he's ever had. And from what I understand, Valve is developing their own system in-house, completely carte blanche, like whatever it costs, do it.
The Michael Abrash thing.
But it's not intended to be a consumer product yet. They're developing the best VR with the thinking that 5-10 years from now, that will be what consumers will have.
The long view.
No matter what, who makes it.
Yeah. I mean, it's really interesting because, you know, the Abrash is at Valve and is working on the VR stuff there.
Yeah.
Carmack is at
Oculus
and working on the VR stuff there.
And they're good friends.
Yeah, they're good friends. But Abrash is the guy who wrote the assembler renderer, the software renderer for Quake.
Yeah.
Like he wrote in assembler a low-level, high-speed renderer for Quake, which is amazing. Like that these two dudes are doing this, are back doing the same thing again 15, 20 years later is rad.
Well, if you read Masters of Doom, Carmack always wanted to make the virtual world. That was always the goal. I think Quake was the stepping stone towards that.
Because remember when they were working on Quake, like they would pop into IRC channels and talk about what Quake was going to be, and it was you would be able to walk through a portal in one server and end up on somebody else's server somewhere else. It was a virtual world that was connected, and I think they thought Quake was going to be an open protocol for that, and then they ended up just making a game.
And it just turns out that VR is the problems of VR, the barrier, the disconnect between reality and VR that your brain can discern. It's just a much higher barrier than a first-person shooter, and then the
it's
problem
much higher
of
than anybody thought then.
And they're still finding that out now.
Yeah.
I think they said that low persistence vision wasn't something that they even knew they had to solve for when they were starting the Oculus, and it's good that they, with their engineers and researchers, have gotten to a point where they realize they have to have this in consumer version.
You're pretty sensitive to the motion in the headsets. Did you notice any kind of twinge? I know you were only in it for maybe 10 minutes, but did you notice any kind of twinges when you were playing games on the Crystal Cove?
The Crystal Cove, the biggest difference, because it was the first time we played Eve Valkyrie.
Mm-hmm.
I think I said this last week. Eve Valkyrie is a game because it's designed so it's a dizzying game because you're in a flight simulator and the world is spinning around you in
it's a zero-G flight simulator.
Zero-G, you have 6 degrees of freedom in terms of flying, but also you're encouraged to look around. So like in Hawken, which is a simulator, right, and you have a lot of movement because you're in a mech jumping up and down, you're looking around in Hawken is more of a situational awareness and less you're firing and charging. But in Eve Valkyrie, your missile lock is your head looking around. Your head plays the role of that mouse. So you can only succeed if you are twitch moving your head fast enough, not your eyes, and we'll get to eye tracking eventually. But in Crystal Cove, moving your head around, both moving the ship around and your head around, was not dizzying in the same way that Euro Truck Simulator was immediately dizzying. And also, going back to Carmack, he tweeted after CES that on his current prototypes, they're like at sub 10 milliseconds.
On motion or on
latency?
Okay.
From what they call it, what is it? Pixels to photons.
I just want to point out that the positional tracking stuff is equally interesting. I can't wait to see what that does to the immersion factor, but that's going to add a new level of complexity to porting games because position of the view was never meant to go outside of the head usually of these characters in the game. Or if there's a lean key, it's usually binary. You're either leaning or not.
Or in between
so
the two
if they
states,
move the perspective, you may end up moving outside the head model. You may end up seeing geometry that's not there. It's going to take a lot more development in order to support that.
So that's why I think that's one of the reasons they're, in addition to costs, is why they chose that cheap 30 FPS camera and not using something like the 6 Sense STEM system, the Hydra system, because that's going to add another $100 in terms of just magnets and electronics.
And also
LEDs are cheap and cameras are cheap and accuracy is good enough.
And the
for
6
sitting.
Sense stuff doesn't work if there's metal in your desk.
Right.
Like it has problems.
So I don't think game developers will need to turn on the positional tracking. It will benefit, but they also talked about the native benefits. If you don't, even if the game doesn't have positional tracking like Team Fortress, the fact that the software is tracking your head, that information is added to the IMU to make it a more comfortable experience. So it will compensate for head movement so that you don't have as big a disconnect between the game, even if the game doesn't take advantage of leaning and looking around.
Right. Like one of the things that Nate said was that when they put people in the Crystal Cove prototype that have never done this before, they last much longer before they punch out.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And now is the right time for anyone who has been following the Oculus development to point out all the information that we got wrong. Welcome that in the comments, please. We just want to be more informed.
I wonder how hard it's going to be to get the next developer kit because there's so much interest now. It's not just backing a Kickstarter.
I think that they'll probably send those to people who are getting ready to ship games.
Yeah, they're going to give them all the big leagues. It's going to be forever before we get our hands on it.
If they're smart, what they'll do?
Give it to us if they're smart.
Yeah, give it to us. We deliver the YouTubes. No, if they're smart, what they'll do is it'll be like a 6-week thing. Like, here's the dev kit. It's out now, and 6 weeks later, the games ship, and you can buy the real thing. I can't wait. I'm ready to go. This
too.
Crystal Cove thing, like
$300 if they can match that target price, or the price of Dev Kit 1 for consumer release. What this demo did, and what their funding and all their talk of partnerships, what CES 2014 did was cement Oculus as a product to take seriously, not as a $300 gimmick and expense that you're going to show off to friends.
Yeah.
Like, you would actually use this to play games.
And the panel developers are taking them seriously now, too.
Oh, yeah. There's one other thing we should talk about. People have, some of the comments on that Oculus interview video were, hey, what the hell's going on? We've been hearing about this thing forever. Why is it not out already? I think that they've done a really smart thing by releasing that dev kit on Kickstarter and then selling them, obviously. But by not releasing that, if they had released a consumer version last Christmas, or even in the next 6 or 8 months before there's titles that are actually going to use that and be good. Like, Euro Truck Sim is an interesting novelty because the support was kind of hacked in there, and it works, but it's real rough, as Norm can attest. And most of the games that support Oculus right now, the actual games, not the tech demos that were designed to run with Oculus, are pretty rough. And even a lot of the tech demos are real rough. Like, they need, in order for this thing to be a long-term success and not just another flash in the pan, they literally need games that are amazing. They need Super Mario 64.
Killer apps.
Yeah, the games that people want to play and are willing to spend $300 as if this was a console launch.
Exactly.
And it takes time to develop games. Like, a fast, bad game can be made in 12 months. But the games that we want to play and the games that I want to play with the Oculus, like Elder Scrolls games, take 2, 3, 5 years to make. So,
don't buy a DK1 now.
Do not buy a dev kit
unless
now.
you're a developer.
So
and making a game.
This is part of what's interesting to me, is that if Carmack is making games, it's a return to the short game cycle.
I don't think he's making games.
Short development cycle.
I think he's helping with engines.
I think he's making games.
He's making games, man. Come on.
I don't think that dude likes making games anymore.
He's making an engine.
Did you play Rage?
Well,
I love it as much as the next guy. Like, I played.
Let's not mention.
If you want to talk about number of hours put into games, I put more hours into Quake 1 and Quake 3 than any other franchise ever.
Yeah.
And Doom, yeah. But yeah.
I think he is, and I think that it's going to be interesting because he can't spend the 5 whatever years it took to make Rage. He's got to spend maybe a year and a half in order to ship, which means it's a smaller scale project, which I think must be so fulfilling for him. So we'll see.
Let's hope that's not all microtransaction based. They're not taking the.
No, I bet it's going to be hugely moddable though, because it's going to be the typical Carmack structure.
Do you want to talk about smartwatches at all? What's your feeling on smartwatches?
I would buy the iWatch. Obviously I would buy the iWatch, but
you mean the one that doesn't exist and is imaginary?
Whenever they want to take my money.
Okay.
But I don't need to talk about it. I just bet it's going to be great.
I think the new Pebble Watch does not look appealing.
The Steel is
Steel
kind of fuggo. I walked through the MetaWatch booth to see what their new designy watches looked like. Also, not particularly appealing. They were all really big and kind of chunky, like Viederman big.
What does that mean?
He always wore big watches.
Oh, okay.
Anything else from CES you want to talk about, Norm? This is the stuff I put on the list, but we've been all over the place.
Did we talk about 3D printed food last week?
Yes, absolutely.
Jeremy, do you want to hear about 3D printed food?
No, is that going to be a thing we really ever care about?
Cake toppers.
No, I was a little disappointed that our 3D printed food video, Joey cut out the Martha Stewart bit.
Oh, really?
Yeah. FYI, we have a video on the site about 3D printed food, candies, sugar candies, and chocolates. But
is that something that we're going to go buy, or are we going to
I
be
don't
printing
think
our own
90% of things at CES, even the interesting stuff, 90% of the interesting stuff at CES aren't things that we're going to buy. It's proof concept technologies, and it allows us to forecast 10 years down the line as armchair futurists.
I think all futurists are probably armchair futurists.
I would say maybe there are two that are
Isaac
are
Asimov.
valid futurists.
That post he made in 1963 was pretty good.
Yeah,
It's a great blog
genuine
post.
futurism.
I liked your, speaking of printers anyway, the Makerbots that you guys showed. I thought that,
Oh, right.
you know, I'm the guy who thinks the camera is a cool feature.
I think the camera's a great feature. Like like that print's been going for 15 hours right now. Last night at 1 o'clock in the morning, I was like, oh, it'd be really nice to see how the print's going. No chance. I can't do that.
Right.
The network connectedness of those new printers is a significantly reduced barrier to entry. It's something that not many other companies are doing right now at that price range. Here's the thing. They're building printers for people who don't have a 3D printer. They're not a lot of times when we look at products like all consumer electronics, like you look at the new iPhone and you look at it as the dude who has last year's iPhone and has to decide whether it's worth spending $600 to get the new one. And they're not in that business. They're in the business of selling printers to people who've never had a 3D printer before. I think that low-end model is really interesting. I'm a little bummed that it's a half resolution of the Replicator 1, 2, and the other models.
It was going to be my first 3D printer until you discovered that.
But you can tweak it.
What does that mean?
I'm sure you can probably get into the like if it's like the other printers we've used so far, you can get into the software and change the resolution yourself.
He said he said you could do that for the other two, but he didn't imply you could for that small one.
No, I think he said for the small one. The build platform is and the size of the print is the biggest limiting factor.
But that's fine. I mean, the kind of stuff that most people are going to be printing at home, like I figure
dollhouse furniture.
Yeah, dollhouse furniture, action figures, games, stuff like that.
Yep.
Or learning stuff. Like I have a 1-year-old child. I fully anticipate having a functional 3D printer in my house by the time she's 8. If she's into making stuff.
And that size for that mini is perfect to put on your desk.
Yeah.
Maybe not the office.
I think the print size and the speed probably. I don't know what the speed's like in that. My hunch is that it's pretty fast because it's half resolution. So when I say half resolution, I mean vertical slices are 0.2 millimeters or 200 microns instead of 100 microns at the default settings.
I guess
Bondo fixes everything. Maybe acetone also.
a lot of people.
No acetone because it's PLA.
Oh, that's right.
Well, a lot of people online were saying that PLA is inferior to ABS, and that I should look into an ABS printer.
TN panels are so inferior to IPS.
So PLA, the one thing that I think is really questionable with these printers, and I think we're going to see if we can get at least 1 or 2 of them to test out. I don't think the big one is worth testing. But the just for our audience, I mean, I'm sure people need that. I really question not putting heated build platforms in these. The Replicator 2, not the Replicator 2X, didn't have a heated build platform. We used Atoms for 6 or 8 months, and it's a nightmare. Like, it is really hard to get the plastic to stick to it at room temperature. You have to put you end up having to coat the surface in either like blue painter's tape, which is pretty sticky, like not the sticky side, the non-sticky side, and you have to have the platform leveled really well. They did add better platform leveling, like a mechanism to make that easier rather than the existing mechanism, which is that you take a business card and you slide it under the nozzles.
Each of the
4 to 6 places, depending on the model printer. And that can go bad if there's like a little dab of plastic dangling out of, since you're talking about 100 micron precision, if there's a tiniest daub of plastic that melted and drooped out of the nozzle when you used it last and you're leveling the printer, then that can get kind of hinky. The mid-range printer uses a glass build plate, which is probably much better for PLA than the other ones I've used. I've not used glass build plates yet. But the low-end one was a plastic build plate, and I think the high-end one was a plastic build plate too. I can't remember the huge printer. So there's 3 printers, Mama Bear, Baby Bear, and Papa Bear. The Papa Bear is enormous and can print like life-size helmets that you can put your head in.
7,000? How much?
It was $6,500, $6,800, something like that. It is a tool for people who actually know that they need a 3D printer. I know Bill Doran was looking at that and thinking, oh, I have models for all of the stuff. He builds props and armor.
Yeah.
So like if you wanted to run off like knee pads or helmet pieces or stuff like that, then you can do that.
At some point, sculpting becomes in traditional casting, molding casting, way more efficient.
Well, it depends on what skills you have. If you're a good CAD person, then maybe it's faster to do it that way.
Not
if you're a
time
good
efficient.
sculptor.
Yeah.
It depends on how many you need to make too.
Yeah.
Like if you're making
And one leads to the other.
Yeah, exactly.
Quite possibly. Yeah. And what about PLA or extrusion versus this new laser hardening version that like the
Form 7?
Yeah, the Form 1 uses.
So the like I think that we've reached probably the limit of, at least unless something changes, with what we can do with fused deposition printers, which is what the Makerbot and all the RepRap printers and all of that stuff are. The 100 micron resolution seems to be about as small as you can get, given the viscosity of the plastic as it comes out of the smallest nozzles you can do without running into massive clogging problems on the nozzle ends, which I'm going to go ahead and tell you, as somebody who's cleaned out a couple of nozzles, it's easier to just replace the nozzles when they clog than it is to try to clean them out, because you have to get the nozzles to 220 degrees Celsius, which is really fucking hot, and then kind of blow the molten plastic out. I don't know about you, but I don't like putting my lips on things that are 220 degrees Celsius. It doesn't feel good. You don't do that. You push more plastic through and then pull it out real quick, but it's a tricky process.
Okay.
The light based printers like the Form Labs are really interesting, but like there's a lot of questions about materials still on that. The materials for that are a lot more expensive.
Oh.
I haven't looked at their prices lately, so I'll do that right now. But the PLA and ABS plastic spools seem to have stabilized at about $50 per kilogram. I use about 2 kilograms of plastic every year if we print every week and then print some extra stuff. So it's not particularly expensive material. One of those spools is a kilogram, and they're big, heavy. Well, obviously they're kilogram spools. The benefit of PLA is that it's non-toxic, so it's cornstarch based rather than ABS, which is a petroleum based plastic. I do notice that when we print ABS stuff here, sometimes I walk away at the end of the day with a really gnarly headache. I'd say it's probably not good for you. The material safety sheet says it's okay, but who knows? And like, it's one of those things that not a lot of people have been exposed to. ABS melty ABS fumes outside of industrial settings, so we may not know. It's like the West Virginia water spill,
Right?
Who the fuck knows what that chemical does, because they've never tested it. So
the reason I wanted to get a Makerbot, and I know they're a little more expensive than a lot of the others, was because they have the whole community, they have the whole infrastructure. Yeah, exactly, and they have the website with all the objects I can get
Thingiverse.
on. Thingiverse, right? They have the community, and they have everything sort of built. They've been around a long time, and they've refined everything. So I hope that they move. Maybe I'll hold off till they move into the light-based printing, because the resolution of that does appeal to me.
I mean, but the other thing to think about is if you're going to do scale, right? Like, what scale stuff are you going to want to print? Because if you're printing stuff that's fairly large, printing at 100 microns is counterproductive, because it means that instead of that taking an hour to print, it's taking 15 hours, right?
And you can finish it.
Yeah, and yeah, you can smear it with filler Bondo. You can do the acetone fume trick, which is also super unhealthy. Assuming you're doing ABS, you can't do that with PLA. Makerbot also has, for dual head printers now, a dissolvable filament. I haven't tried that yet. I'm gonna actually order some because I want to see what you do with that. And the resin for the Formlabs printer is 1 liter for $150. So it's a lot more expensive, because we're getting way more than 1 liter of volume out of that kilogram spool, or 3 liters of volume for it's expensive. So, like, for something to noodle around with the kids, I think you're not going to do much better than a RepRap or a Makerbot or something like that.
Okay.
And just like, you're a handy guy, I think that there's real benefit, and maybe it's that you build a RepRap, monkey around with it for a little bit, and then decide you want to spend more. Like, I think there's a real benefit to building printers, your first printer yourself, if you're going to be if you're an enthusiast, because then you know how it works. If you like, they're relatively simple machines, right? There's a print head with a motor in it that spits out plastic. There's an X, Y, and Z axis that move, or sometimes there's not an X, Y, and Z axis, but for the most part, there's something that moves either the print head or the build platform in 3 axes. And then there's electronics that control all of that stuff. And by putting together a couple of these, I have a much better understanding of how they work than I think I would, if I went to Office Depot and bought something.
Yeah, I'm sure that's true. But the new ones, they're not even laser cut anymore. They have these new vacuum formed cases, and they're beautiful.
I think they're still steel frames with some exterior plastic that makes them look fancy. The steel frames are a little more rigid, which is nice. So you end up with less wobbling on the printhead.
Assembled in the USA.
They're made in Brooklyn. Yeah, the new software is pretty good too. I hadn't used Makerware in a while. And I'm doing a print that previously would have bombed out right now, and it's gone. Like I said, 15 hours in. So that's Makerbot. I'm a little torn on them because they're not doing. They started out doing the open hardware, and they've backed away from that. They've gotten a lot more expensive. I think that they're probably moving in the right direction now. I think that we'll see those prices continuing to come down as things get cheaper to make. But I don't know.
$800 is a good price for a 3D printer for your first 3D printer.
Yeah, and when you can look at like solid doodles and stuff like that for $400, $500, $600, like it's real hard to recommend a $1,400 or $1,300 start. Essentially, what is a really nice, well put together Makerbot cupcake size printer for $1,400. It's a gross oversimplification because I'm sure it's a much better printer than the cupcake was. But yeah. I mean, the cupcake was something that they put together with stuff you can buy at the hardware store for the most part.
Price goes down, reliability goes up, usability goes up.
Yeah,
both ways. Find the happy center.
Yeah, but that said, the software that they're doing is much easier for people who don't know what they're doing to use, I think, than Replicator G and all the other stuff that's out there. Anyway, okay, so that's it for CES stuff. Net neutrality. This is obviously the big news item this week. A court has ruled that the FCC's application of the net neutrality principle is against the law based on some real gnarly legal semantic stuff. And of course,
what does this mean?
Probably nothing for the short term.
What did the ruling actually say and mean?
The ruling says that the FCC doesn't have the rights to control the telecoms using the language that they applied in the initial brief or whatever it was that established the principle of net neutrality.
Only applying to landlines.
Well, net neutrality doesn't apply to cellular.
Yes. So this case was only about net neutrality for broadband for landlines.
Right.
And all the ruling said, and the ruling actually was not the worst that it could have been for net neutrality, was said that the FCC has this incredible authority, but in the current role of the FCC, in the language of its charter, it does not apply to broadband, landline connections, telecoms, which they can go back and change, and then they would absolutely have authority over that.
Right. So had they said telecoms instead of information networks, it would have applied.
See, I stuck my head in the sand over this article because I was too distraught that it might actually be true. Because all the headlines were net neutrality is overturned, destroyed, end of the world. And I said, that can't be. I can't deal with this news right now. I'm going to wait and see what Norm says. Thank you.
And so,
hold on, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't be concerned. Like your congressmen and senators should be aware of your feelings about this. Like that is something that needs to continue happening because it's going to be a constant battle.
And also, telecoms are much better at lobbying than tech companies who potentially will have to pay more and also pass the buck down.
What does this mean if it holds? It means that Comcast or Charter or AT&T, whoever your broadband provider is, can say, hey, we've noticed you watch a lot of Netflix. If you'd like to get a better Netflix experience for $5 a month, we'll prioritize your Netflix traffic over your neighbor's Netflix traffic.
Or go to Netflix and say, hey, Netflix, you use a lot of our traffic. You have to pay more.
That's a different thing.
Netflix would have to pass the buck down to you.
Yeah.
Very different from SOPA also. They
already do that with Netflix, actually.
Well, I know Netflix pays. Yeah. They're getting paid both ways.
Yeah. So yeah, to be continued is kind of where that ends up. Google bought Nest for $3.2 billion. Nest makes thermostats and smoke detectors now. Jeremy,
and lighting systems.
Systems?
Didn't they come out? Am I imagining that? Didn't they come out with a light for your bedside that tracks your sleep pattern?
What?
No, I don't. I think that's somebody else.
Oh, is that true? I tend to think I'm up on these things.
I usually do, but I think you're wrong on this one.
All right.
I
Well,
think there's nest.co.uk, which does sell lighting.
now you guys go on. Tell about the purchase.
I'm going to visit the Nest store.
Nest.co.uk is a lighting company. Period. Maybe that's what you're thinking of.
They have a blanket
about,
and they have a custom water bottle with Nest written on it. They got bought by Google. They consider themselves a robotics company. There was a really interesting article on the Wall Street Journal. I can't remember where I read it. I read it in Pocket last night.
What should Jesus do?
No, that's different.
That's the Wall Street Journal.
No, what should Jesus do?
Yeah, what should Jesus do?
Yeah. With Tony Fadell, who's one of the founders, who was one of the designers on the iPod at Apple in the old days.
CEO of Nest.
He's CEO of Nest. And like their whole focus has been on robotics and kind of artificial intelligence. They took something that was previously that should have been simple, was needlessly complex, and made it simple again. I don't have a heating system in my house that works with a Nest, so I don't know what that's like. Did you buy one, Norm?
Nope, I don't.
I bought one.
I don't have air conditioning.
It worked with the Nest, but I didn't use it for anything but the Wi-Fi because the Nest was actually in a spot of the house where I never went. And so it didn't know I was home.
Okay.
And so it couldn't track and do the automatic scheduling, but it was great to have on Wi-Fi just because I could be upstairs and we only had the one thermostat in the basement. I could be anywhere and I could adjust the temperature.
Cool. I bought the thermostat last year. I mean the smoke detector.
Yeah.
And so the weird thing about that is it uses the same presence stuff. It knows when I walk up and down the hall. It knows like at night, it has a light sensor, so it knows if I'm up in the middle of the night and I walk underneath it, it turns on a little light that shines down and illuminates my path just
That's
very
cool.
dimly. When it goes off, when I left a cast iron pot in the oven the other day when I was warming up the oven, it made a lot of smoke and it said, "Hey, the smoke alarm's getting ready to go off. Do you want this to happen?"
No.
The smoke alarm's getting ready to go off.
The actual unit said that?
The unit says that. It sent me a push message.
Oh.
At the same time, it said, "Hey, we've detected smoke." And, and then it started doing a countdown where it's like, you have 10 seconds to stop the horrible shrieking noise. They're really neat products. I don't understand. I mean, I know that they were going to get around to funding that was going to value them at like $2 billion, which kind of makes sense because they are the only people in this market as far as I know.
I got Nest confused with Withings.
Oh, Withings makes scales and
Yeah.
blood pressure cuffs
And now a
fitness
sleep
trackers.
light. So that,
Yes.
pardon me, I apologize.
I don't think Withings is worth $3.2 billion. It's a neat scale, though.
I think if Google wants to get inside, Google services and Google Now inside your home in every room outside of your office and not on your smartphones, then Nest is the perfect way to do it.
So they said
If you wanted to-
explicitly they didn't want to do that, though.
No, they said that we have the Google services. We have a lot of opportunities that we're not ready to talk about now, but we're very interested in seeing how we can use those services in our products.
It's
we're
data.
exploring ways.
It's data.
What they explicitly said they wouldn't do is take consumer data to do anything but improve Nest services and products.
Somebody made a joke, I don't know if it was on your forums or Reddit, but that Google now has the ability to raise the temperature in your house until you join Google+.
They will make you like them.
Oh, that's terrible. So that means Google bought Boston Dynamics. Like, they're deep in robotics now. Robotics and physical real world business.
Totally cool. You can't get data without real world things.
That's true. So we talked about Dell 4K monitors. Did you guys get outraged about the Gmail Google Plus
Nope.
thing?
Nope.
Not at all. No, I didn't understand
not
that
at
outrage.
all.
No, I don't have. I mean, I'm open to people emailing me, maybe more so than others. Maybe I have a little more patience for that. But
I think there's a harassment concern was the thing, more than anything.
Wait.
So the gist is, for people who don't know, Google added a setting, and was it on Gmail? It was on Gmail, right?
What?
The setting is a Gmail setting.
Not a Google.
It's not
Plus
a Google
setting.
Plus setting. It's a Gmail setting that lets you opt out of having people email you through Google Plus without giving those people your email address. So somebody could type email Will Smith into Google Plus. It'll send me an email message which I already get if I'm up on Google Plus anyway. If they send me a message with Google Plus, I get the same email message. It just gives them a way to respond. Like, I guess if I respond to that email, then they get an email message back, and it goes back and forth.
Then they know your email address.
Then they know my email address.
It's the same way that Google Groups works currently.
Right. I didn't understand what the kerfluffle was about. They have since changed it for people that they changed the policy. I mean, okay, it should have probably been an opt-in thing rather than an opt-out thing. Anytime you give people access to your private information, that I'm okay with that being an opt-in rather than an opt-out. They have since fixed it for people who have a large following.
How so?
So the default setting is now only people that you've added to your circles on Google Plus can do that. Not everyone, because the problem was everyone on the internet could type in Jeremy Williams and hit your email box if they so desired. I don't. It seems like they should have just made that people you've added to your circles the default setting rather than.
Now you're saying that's the default setting across the board now?
No, that's only the default setting if you have more than a few thousand followers on Google Plus.
There's a line. Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
So if you're a famous, then
I see.
Then you don't get hassled.
Are you a famous?
I was famous enough.
I see.
Yeah. I wouldn't look. I was curious. They sent a different. If you are a famous, then you got a different email welcoming you to this wonderful new feature.
Nice to be a famous.
It must be. SimCity. You remember SimCity, guys, right?
Yeah.
EA's fabulous rebooting of the SimCity franchise.
Yeah, went without a hitch.
Yeah, it's online only.
I give it a 9. No, wait. A 6.4. No, wait. A 2.
Did they revisit that again now that it's fixed?
I have no idea.
When they launched that game, they said, "Hey, it won't work in offline mode," and then somebody, either at Rock Paper Shotgun or who the Rock Paper Shotgun people talked to, hacked in offline mode. It now has an official offline mode as of the 10th patch, the 10th monthly patch, which comes out soon, I assume. That game was a punchline for most of last year. I think they single-handedly raised and burned the SimCity franchise name for all time. But now at least I guess you can play it offline, so that's nice. Blackberry is doubling down on hardware keyboards. So first they fired Alicia Keys. First they fired Alicia Keys, and now they're doing a keyboard-only mode. Now they're saying they're going to do hardware keyboards going forward.
There have been an influx of accessories for the iPhone to add keyboards.
Those things that clamp on and are Bluetooth.
Clamp onto the bottom, and
seem terrible.
Just like the stylus, it is a imperfect solution to a problem.
Didn't I read that somebody owns the patent to that and is very litigious about defending it?
I'm sure. Wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah.
At this point, I've gotten good enough with the software keyboard that I don't miss hardware keyboards at all.
Yeah.
And I carried a BlackBerry for a couple of periods on and off over the years. I kind of feel like the hardware keyboard is like the old guy that prints out his email and then writes the response and his secretary types it in for him. Maybe I'm wrong.
You know what's cool? Just on the subject of typing on phones, is I just noticed. I don't know if it's an iOS 7 update or if I didn't notice it, but iOS 7 now understands what do you call those words when you combine them? Conjunct.
Mondregreens?
Whoa, I don't know.
Portmanteaus?
No. Like will. Like when you WE''LL, you know, like or
real contractions.
Contractions.
Yes.
So it
What data can't do?
It knows contractions now. So it'll figure it out based on context, is what I'm saying. So like if you do WELL, it'll leave well.
It's better.
And then if you type in go, it'll fix the last word. It'll put an apostrophe into it.
It definitely goes back. Like it uses forward context instead of just past context.
Is that new?
That is new in iOS 7.
I love it.
Yeah, I noticed that first thing in like beta. The first beta I installed, I was like, wait, it just changed the word 2 words back. How did that happen?
I am so scorned by this that I just go backspace and fix it. But recently I've been saying I just start typing, and I was amazed. I love it. So that's great.
This is what my dad does too. His emails are almost illegible. Finally, the FTC, this happened over the holidays, but the FTC and the FDA are cracking down on personal genetic sites like 23andMe and GeneLink that were presumably giving you medical information or medical advice based on your genetic profile. if you haven't logged, I subscribed to 23andMe. I paid for that. I thought it was really neat. A lot of the information that was really neat is now gone. So they've had to pull it all down.
No.
Yeah. So a lot of the things that said you have this chance of having prostate cancer or colon cancer or whatever, that's all disappeared.
I thought they couldn't market it anymore, but they were going to leave all that information. I just sent my spit in.
I can't find it in there. It may be that they buried it someplace or I have to opt into something, but I dug through it last night for a fairly lengthy period of time and didn't see anything.
When the announcement came out that they were under pressure, I had this kit sitting on my desk for 9 months, and I finally sent it in.
Yeah.
And I guess I was too late because I still haven't gotten the results back.
It usually takes 2 weeks.
No, not in my case. It's been a month, but they told me several months.
Check your spam. Oh, maybe they're backed up then.
Anyway.
I think that's it for news. Let's hit the music. Maybe, Norm, you should go take that call when we have to take that, and Jeremy and I will talk on for a minute. Hey, Norman Chan, what have you been testing?
I want to talk for the next 6 minutes while I have time about her.
That's not what you'll be back before the end of the show, and we can do that in the fake outtakes.
Okay.
What have you been testing, Norm? You have a watch.
I have a...
It's a
That's
physical
not real technology.
wristwatch.
Yes, it's a physical wristwatch, and I thought it'd be best to wear a wristwatch before a smartwatch comes out, so that I can actually have something to say about.
Have you ever
wearing
worn a
watches.
wristwatch before?
Yeah, of course. When I was 5, Mickey Mouse wristwatch.
You had to learn how to tell time.
Calculator wristwatch in elementary school. You go through phases.
Even my son has a wristwatch.
Yeah.
I saw a really cool watch in the kids section at Nordstrom the other day.
There was absolutely nothing insightful about wearing a wristwatch that all the millions and millions of people who wear wristwatches don't already know.
It's kind of a style choice, though.
It absolutely is a style choice. But I don't. There's gonna be like thousands of tech writers who never have worn wristwatches, or who currently don't, and will want to say things about smartwatches when Apple releases a smartwatch. And I don't think that's valid unless you actually wear wristwatches.
I used to wear a watch before I had a phone.
Yeah, me too.
I needed to know what time it was.
Exactly.
I had one of those Seiko automatic. It wound automatically and charged a battery and ran a quartz watch.
That's heavy. I had calculator watches for years.
I never was cool enough to wear a calculator watch. Anything else you've been testing, Norm, besides wristwatches?
I don't think we talked about this since before you went on break, but Lenovo Yoga Pro,
the
13-inch,
Haswell one?
The Haswell one with the super high-resolution screen, was disappointed by it because the screen was too high resolution for Windows.
Yeah, I was going to say, how does it handle...
It does not handle desktop well at all, even with pixel doubling, because many programs, web browsers, Chrome and Windows, doesn't pixel double your fonts. IE does. But again, every time I use a Windows 8 laptop, all it does is make me wish for a touchscreen on MacBooks.
Yeah, we didn't talk about it, but there's a lot of Windows 9 rumors coming that it'll be a 2015 product, and that they're going to unveil more details at Build in a couple of months.
Yes, Build being in San Francisco again.
I just got invited to that, so we'll have somebody there.
And I don't think anything else that I didn't talk about
how does
on the
it?
last podcast.
Does it not will it not do the quad resolution thing on the desktop, or do you have to change the DPI manually?
You can change DPI to 200%.
Okay.
The good thing about Windows is you can also change to 150% or 125%. A lot of things will scale well, but a lot of things also will not scale at all.
And when you change
in dialog boxes specifically,
when you change it to 200%, it's not smart. Most of the apps aren't. Is there a way for apps to be smart and do things like display the photos at full resolution inside that frame, like
yes,
OS
they'll
10
just
does?
ignore DPI scaling.
So like Lightroom ignores DPI
they
scaling.
Will ignore across the board.
Okay, that's nice at least. We talked about the Nest Protect. I built some Lego over Christmas, over the holidays. Norm, any Lego? Not stuff you can talk about, probably.
Not stuff I can talk about.
Okay.
Oh.
I mean, not big secret. I just want to save it for video.
That's exciting.
We didn't talk about the Simpsons Lego.
I think it sucks.
Norm hates the Simpsons Lego. Jeremy, what did you think about the Simpsons Lego?
It's about time, and it looks cool.
The minifigs look terrible.
No, they don't.
They
don't look like minifigs. I mean, I would say
look like Simpsons.
they look inconsistent with minifigs.
That's why. Why not just get a little Simpsons toy?
Okay, fair enough.
I like Simpsons toys.
My son has been building Minecraft Legos.
Oh, I did those.
Perfect sense.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Is it really?
They're pretty good.
Are you kidding me?
Conceptually, yes. They're building blocks. Minecraft was Lego digitally.
This is the Norm Chan Haters Minute.
Minecraft, the idea is that you're building whatever you want. And Lego naturally is like if you had a box full of bricks and you just built a world, that is the equivalent of Minecraft. But to buy a kit and to say build something very specifically to look like
Minecraft,
a pre-designed Minecraft world as a tribute to Minecraft is not in the same spirit.
You understand you don't have to follow the instructions, though. I mean, you do maybe the first time to get a feel for it, but
they don't even give you enough pieces to make it.
They give you a bunch of extra pieces in each of those kits.
They give you like 30 extra pieces.
So buy a couple
very
kits.
Generous.
But it does come with the Creeper and Steve minifig, which is pretty cool.
Absolutely, it is a tribute. It is if you like Minecraft.
And
here is the thing you love that was based off Lego in statue Lego form.
You can buy 3 different tile sets.
If you buy many of those kits,
I've joined them together, and they are one giant Minecraft.
Do you have this?
I have all 3, yeah.
So yes, your building blocks are tile sets.
I got them for Christmas.
They're for 10-year-olds. I thought it was pretty advanced. I mean, I
didn't know where you were going with.
I had a hard time with them.
What the fuck are you doing?
No.
You're grown men.
No. They're little tiny pieces. There's a lot of work and little intricate parts.
The only thing I would knock about those Minecraft Lego kits is that they're really hard to take apart.
It comes with the.
It does come with the
tool.
The Duber, and it's the second generation one, the good one.
Is that the word?
No, absolutely not the Duber.
It's not called. Don't call it the Duber. The brick separator is the technical term, I believe. But it's the orange one, not the old green one. So it's much easier, but it's still a lot of flat one by one pieces and stuff like that. It's kind of tricky. I think that's it for me. Do you want to take a couple questions, Jeremy, while Norm goes and does a phone call, and then comes back in time to talk about her at the end of the show?
I'll probably listen to you answer the questions, but I'm happy to.
Alrighty then.
Emails? Well, but we do the other one.
Emails.
'Cause it's, we don't do emails. We do
Emails?
No. Questions. Boom.
If you have a question for This Is Only a Test, the email address is podcast@tested.com. Keep your questions. We do audio questions and written questions. So what that means is keep your written questions relatively short. Keep your audio questions under 45 seconds. And please listen to it before you send it. If it sounds like you're recording it from I don't know. What's something that sounds bad when you record it?
Through a rug.
Through a rug on the back of a bus. If you are wrapped up in a carpet standing on the back of a bus and it sounds like that, don't send the question and just re-record it until it sounds good. Our first question comes from Anthony Strudwick, and he says, "Hello, Tested Crew. I was catching up on the Oktobercast, couldn't watch it live due to a family emergency, and during one of your hot pepper discussions, you jokingly asked what would happen if you touched your junk after eating one. Unfortunately, I have made that mistake in the past, and this is my story. Last summer, before leaving my grandparents' house, my grandpa thought it would be funny to give me a habanero pepper. At the time, I had no idea what a habanero pepper was, and being the hot pepper-loving guy I am, I ate it without question. It did not take long for me to realize just how hot this pepper was. I was 15 minutes away from my house, and the only thing available to quench the flame was water. Finally, after 15 minutes of torture, 2 bottles of water and a glass of milk, the heat finally began to stop. Not long after that, I found myself needing to use the restroom due to the large amounts of liquid consumed. I did my business as usual, but after 2 minutes, my crotch began to sting and burn. I had no idea what was going on in my pants, but it was getting worse fast. Eventually, I freaked out enough to hop in the shower and douse my flaming man parts, only to realize afterward what was going on. Needless to say, I now wash my hands thoroughly after eating anything spicy before taking a leak."
Should have doused his man parts in whipped cream.
Yeah, the whipped cream is the real winner here. I don't think I have anything to add to that. I would say don't touch your junk after eating peppers. You know, do you eat peppers? Do you cook with peppers?
I like to. I end up paying for it, but I like to.
I started wearing gloves when I'm chopping peppers. Like especially if it's something really hot.
Smart.
Yeah, because it's too well. I'm afraid to pick up the baby.
Yeah,
because that would be bad.
That's serious.
It'd be horrible.
Absolutely.
But mainly because I don't like. I'm always afraid. It's hard to get soap and water doesn't necessarily take that oil away. So you can get it on your eyes and cause real problems.
Mm-hmm. Like olive oil, they say, is it or no?
Anything with fat helps.
Okay.
Lipids.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's why you drink milk or do whipped cream or whatever. Next question comes from. Oh, that's the same question. This one comes from Michael Madden. He says, "Hello, tested crew. Last week you had a discussion about buying game titles digitally versus physical discs. While I always enjoy your talks, I was a bit saddened at the lack of perspective on the issue. Specifically, the issue of rights was not taken into consideration at all. With physical media, you have the same ownership rights you would have with anything else, but with digital media, you are a licensee, which means you cannot resell or loan the product, and they can terminate your service if they feel like it. While this might not be important to you, it is a valid point. With digital content, there is a trade-off. Ease for ownership rights. Until there is a digital bill of rights entitling me to an equivocal guarantee, I am allotted now for... He's buying physical media because he wants rights, basically. That's where this ends up. The last sentence doesn't make that much sense. I mean, I assume this is while I was gone. You guys talked about discs versus physical media.
No.
Oh, okay.
He's absolutely right.
Yeah, I buy digital a lot. I buy digital based on platform. So, like, I buy Nintendo stuff mostly on cartridges still, because their digital distribution terms are kind of gnarly. Like, for example, if you lose your 3DS, you've also lost all of the games that are stored on the SD card in your 3DS. Even if you back up that SD card, those games are tied to that particular piece of hardware.
Even if you have downloaded them from their e-store.
Even if you downloaded them from their e-store.
That's nuts.
It's not good. The Sony terms seem to have changed a little bit with the PS4. I haven't quite wrapped my head around that yet, but I haven't bought a lot of games for PS4, so it's not an issue. I feel like Microsoft, even though they do reserve the right to kill your ability to play all of the games you've bought if you misbehave on Xbox Live, I don't misbehave on Xbox Live, so I'm kind of okay with that. It's a little scary with kids around because you always wonder what's going to happen if, like, you know, it's not an issue now, obviously, but when you have 6 and 8 and 10-year-old kids and they're playing games and whatever, who knows what they'll do. But
you're okay with saying, fine, I don't need to resell this. I'm committing this money to this game for me and my account forever.
Yeah, I don't resell games, though, so it's not... Like, for me, it's a reduction of clutter.
Or give it to a friend. I guess Steam has actually is the only one who's taken that step where you can now lend games...
Kind of.
...across your friends.
I don't think it's across friends. I think you have to be in the same house.
Wait. I think you can give them to anybody online. But
there's a new thing, yeah.
But you now can't play it.
I think that's only for stuff you haven't activated yet.
Okay. Well,
no, I don't know. I could be wrong.
We should look into that because I think maybe it is for anything.
Like, I like a lot about how Steam works, but I don't really like the... Like, I still feel like if something gets broken with your account on Steam, you're probably pretty boned because I don't know that you can call someone and get help with that. I'm sure... I've heard both really good stories from people and horror stories, so I don't... Like, you with the anecdotes like that, you never kind of know where the truth lies. Yeah. But yeah, it's like this is a problem, and if you are into selling games back or giving them to friends or whatever,
you're done.
You shouldn't buy digital. Yeah, right. It's the irony is, of course, that Microsoft with the Xbox One had a whole strategy for turning. I guess they were going to take all physical rights away and make everything a digital, but with some limited sharing and stuff like that. And people completely flipped out, and they had to change their policy mid-course.
Well, to this reader or listener's point. That's probably why Microsoft wants to do that.
No, well, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, Microsoft, everybody wants to kill GameStop, right? Because they're hey, I buy a game on Tuesday for $60. I sell it back on Friday for $20, and then they go back and resell it for $55. Why would Microsoft and Sony and the other publishers not want to get rid of that?
And there's so much markup there that there's not a whole lot of money in it for the end user, especially once the games are old. You know, if it's a new game, then you can make maybe more than half your money back.
Well, and but then you're paying $30 for a 3-day rental or a 5-day rental or something like that. It's insane.
But if you were to buy it digitally, you would not even be able to do that.
Well, that's true. That money doesn't come back.
Yeah.
The other problem, I mean, and there's also a concern where the creators of the games make no money at that point either. You know, that's a $30 swing for GameStop, not for, whoever made the game that we're talking about, hypothetically. I don't know. I mean, part of me says if games were priced more reasonably, if you were looking at $30 or $40 for AAA titles, I don't feel bad not being able to resell Thomas Was Alone that I bought on Steam because it was $10, and I feel like there's always a chance that I will want to go back and play Thomas Was Alone. I really liked that game a lot. It was really good, and my $10 was well spent.
Yeah, the convenience factor wins for me.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that I can download it on any machine, and I never have to worry about a box on my shelf collecting dust, which for me is actually a problem. Like,
Yeah.
I don't like that anymore.
My garage is full of shit that I don't ever use because it's in my garage.
Yeah, I love nostalgia as much as the next guy, but I have moved to appreciating the digital versions.
There's also a concern about archival stuff, though. If you look at what happened with not last generation consoles, but the PS2, Xbox, GameCube era, a lot of the stuff that was online on the Xbox One and even early Xbox 360 games like Shadowrun and some of that stuff just doesn't work anymore because they turned off. When they disabled the version of Xbox Live, am I going to be able to download my copy of Brothers that I bought from XBLA 20 years from now?
Yeah,
probably not.
It's a good point, but I trust the community on that one. I think once we get past enough years where those consoles have become so easy to emulate and that software is so easy to download and the companies care so little about protecting those rights.
That's true.
That we'll be in a spot where we can replay them.
I don't know if companies will ever care about protecting those rights at this point. I feel like that's probably the HD remix is a perpetual part of our lives now.
Yeah, maybe. But there'll be a period where they don't care as much as they did, and they will.
Or their companies are sold or whatever. Right. Okay, so I don't think there's ever going to be a digital bill of rights for people who buy stuff online, though, which is unfortunate. Last question is from Chris Marley. He says, "Hey, buddies, my name is Chris, and my question is about designers or editors using Macs. Is there a reason? I'm not a PC elitist or anything. I'm just curious as to why. Every time I watch something like The Verge's show Small Empires, every office he goes to is filled with Macs. It seems that people involved with photography, video production, or web development use Macs. Why is that? Have a nice day." I think Norm is going to answer this question.
Age-old question, isn't it?
In the old days, it was because of font rendering. So in the old days, you used Quark Express, which was, I think, a Mac-only program for a while. And the reason magazine designers, when I was working in the magazine business, used Quark on a Mac was that the font replication was the same from the screen to the printer that you use for proofs in the office to the printer that you use to make the thousands of issues of magazines, which actually, if you make a mistake with font rendering, you can lose lines of copy and, stories can stop making sense. All sorts of stuff can go bad. That has been less of an issue in the post Windows 95, 98, and especially XP timeframe. I know for a while it was also about color reproduction because they had for a while, it may not be better, but at least the color calibration routines were familiar to people on Mac and they weren't on Windows. And then for video production for a long time, it was because Final Cut was a Mac-only program.
It still is, but then they kind of ruined Final Cut for the professionals.
Yeah.
With 10.
Yeah.
And now everyone uses Premiere, ironically, which is on PC as well as Mac, but they were already on Mac, so most of them just stick there.
And my hunch is that people who are using Premiere on a Mac are probably our video workstations some of them are 4 years old at this point because, while there have been improvements in coding speed from a usability standpoint, you don't need to upgrade those machines that often anymore. So, at some point we'll get a shiny new Mac Pro for Joey, but until then we'll keep using the old Silver Towers and they'll be fine. So
I don't see just anybody buying PC laptops or desktops in my space. And I just have a small group of friends in my family, but everyone's buying Macs anyway. Not even artists and video professionals. It seems like that's just where the momentum is.
So, on laptops, it's there's two things. One, I switched to Macs in 2009, 2010, somewhere in there, because I like the OS. Vista was a disaster. Windows 7 wasn't out yet. The OS 10, the stuff that they had changed in OS 10 at that point was really productivity focused, and it was really designed to make the small screens of the laptop feel like as usable as my giant desktop monitor was. And it's simple stuff like expose, right? So you could see all the windows at once just by gesturing down on the trackpad. The other thing for me on the Mac laptops is that the trackpads for so many years were infinitely better than the trackpads on every PC laptop I ever used, even the ones that were kind of okay. And when you combine those two things, then all of a sudden I had a 4.5 or 5 pound laptop that I could use as effectively as I used a big desktop computer 3 years before. And that's really compelling for the kind of work that I do. It doesn't apply to everyone, but I know a lot of people bought Mac laptops because of that. Now it's just industrial design, I think. And there's a cachet.
And, I guess you could make the argument that artists care more about the aesthetics, and Apple has that over most PC manufacturers in terms of the hardware design.
Yeah. I mean, and a lot of it is once you get locked into an operating system, that's where you stay.
Right. And my main PC is a PC, just for the argument.
The thing that you use. So I use my PC at home for playing games and editing video because it's a hexacore. Yeah. It's a big hexacore thing, and Premiere really likes that, and that makes it, that's good for me when I'm cutting a 2-hour podcast.
Yeah.
But yeah, for day-to-day like writing and stuff, I use my laptop because I can sit on the couch. That'll do it for questions. As always, the email address is podcast@tested.com. Keep your questions short. Keep them coherent and cogent. And I guess that'll do it for us this week. Jeremy, did you have anything you were testing you wanted to talk about?
Does that include games I've been playing?
We can talk. Let me play the outro, and then we'll talk about games for a little bit, and then we'll talk about her. Today's outro comes from Ad Hoc. It's if you want to make a custom outro, we haven't had any in a couple of weeks. The way to do that is to search for raw outro song file. The instructions are in that thread on the forums, and you can post your edited outro file to SoundCloud. Make sure you enable downloads, and we may use it on an upcoming podcast. So here it is. Thanks, Ad Hoc.
Hi there, I didn't see you.
Tested.
Do you want to talk about the Star Trek convention?
Oh yeah, I want to talk about
We're
Star
talking
Trek
about that.
convention.
Tested. So, Jeremy Williams.
Yeah,
Did you buy new consoles? I didn't ask.
Just the PS4.
Okay.
I don't do cable TV. I'm one of those cable cutters, and so I'm not interested in the TiVo functionality, the DVR functionality.
There's no DVR functionality. You watch TV through the Xbox.
So it just knows how to change my channels.
It knows how to change channels for
I'm
you.
not interested.
And it takes 75 watts of power while it's doing that, which is a lot.
So I'm not interested in that. The UI doesn't excite me. Most of the games are going to be cross-platform. So I went with the PS4 because I liked the PlayStation 3 more than I thought I would. It came out first, and the hardware's nice, blah, blah, blah.
Okay.
So there you go. But the game I've been playing is only the game that came out yesterday, Broken Age.
Oh, I haven't played that yet. I downloaded it last night.
And it's surprisingly there's surprisingly a lot there that I had no idea about.
It's an adventure. This is the first big Kickstarter game that's come out. Like the first big dollar one.
And
FTL and a bunch of other stuff came out.
Double Fine has gone all in with it. Like they're betting the company on it. They think that if this game isn't successful, the whole company is going to be in some trouble, and they are passionate about making this a good game. And I'm really excited because I've watched every documentary, and there've been a ton of them.
Yeah, the guys who did the
hours and hours and hours. 2-player productions.
Yeah, 2-player productions. That's who I was trying to come up with.
So they've done it.
Hi there, I didn't see you.
Oh, okay.
I hit the wrong button.
So
I just touched my trackpad.
I just want to say that they've done a great job shielding the viewers through countless hours of documentary from the game while showing a little bit. They showed several voice actors and lots of scenes, but I'm immersed. It's a fun game. There's
Are we supposed to talk about this?
Yeah, no. They said it's cool. They said it's okay to let your reviews go, to not talk about what happens after a certain point in the game.
Okay.
Preferably.
So they basically gave to backers.
There's no embargo.
Like that sheet that they usually give pre-release games, where they're like, here are the things we would ask you not to talk about in your review. That's
exactly.
funny.
But it's the problem. My problem with the game is there's not a whole lot of puzzle solving. I mean, I'm a couple hours in, and there's 3 or 4 things you might call puzzles. They're very easy, and it's supposed to ramp up. The Act 2 is supposed to be particularly harder, but I figure since there hasn't been a popular adventure game in eons.
Well, Walking Dead.
You consider that an adventure game?
I think I'd call that. I mean,
it's like an act. It's an act. Well, I guess you're right. Yeah. Okay.
I mean, it's about talking.
No, you're right.
But it's kind of the talking adventure game genre more than the like the old LucasArts kind of. Which here's an inventory, figure out which way the things go together to solve the problem.
This is and that's a good point, because Walking Dead, even though it's in 3D and this is very much 2D, there's a lot of that kind of pixel hunting in both games, and so you're looking for what you're supposed to click on in some cases, but. Unlike the classic games, this is pretty straightforward, and it's more of like you watch the cutscenes play out, then you click again, and he walks, and then you click again, and another cutscene. And so it's very easy to get into this game. There's nobody's going to get stuck, and I'm sure that was a priority for them.
Is it a mouse and keyboard game, or does the gamepad work with it?
I don't even know. I assume the gamepad works with it because I saw in the documentary people playing on the couch.
Okay. But
I'm playing mouse and keyboard.
Okay. I went over to the Idle Thumbs office and recorded this week's episode with them to talk about CES and Oculus and stuff like that. And then afterwards, they introduced me to a game called Nidhogg, which I have seen at like the IDGA and a bunch of different places over the last year and a half, maybe 2 years even, but had never actually played. That game is amazing.
Nid.
Nidhogg.
Okay.
It's a fencing game. So it's side scroll, it's 2D side scroller. One player's on the left side, one player's on the right side. You face off with foils. You have the three poses. You can huck your foil at the other guy if you want. And the goal isn't to kill the other person. The goal is to get to the far side of the map. So the maps have multiple screens, and it ends up the thing that ends up happening is, instead of being a game where you fight each other, this is important. You can only run in one direction if you got the last kill. So if you kill the other person more frequently, then you have the initiative to run in the direction you're supposed to run. There's an arrow that pops up on the screen that says "Go right," and it's color coded to match your dude's color. When you're defending, that puts the other person in the defending mode, and they can just keep respawning. So essentially, they become a series of NPCs, like the equivalent of a series of NPCs. And they defend until they get a kill, and then they run in their direction. So it ends up being this real push-pulley, tug-of-war kind of back-and-forth game. It has some fighting game elements. I'm not a big fighting game guy, as anybody who's watched any giant bomb fighting game stuff knows. But you get it ends up being a really in the fighting game elements are watching where the other guy's sword is and knowing what the counter is for that, which basically means stabbing with the longer reach to kill him before he kills you, or moving up to block or counter or whatever.
Sounds a little bit like Prince of Persia, but evolved.
It's kind of Prince of Persia, but this is a strict 2-player game. It is a 2-player versus game. They have AI, so there's a single-player mode. There's some online stuff that I haven't gotten to work yet. I don't know if it's because nobody's playing or because they're working on online code still.
What platform is it?
It's on PC right now for Steam. I assume it'll come out on everything in the future. But it is like the most fun I've had sitting on a couch playing games with people in a long time. And I do a fair amount of sitting on the couch playing games with people. Maybe we'll drag the PC in, hook it up to the TV in there, and give it a spin this afternoon. But yeah, it's a pretty awesome game. I also played a lot of Black Flag.
Oh yeah. I started it, but I have not. I don't have the time for a game like that, and if it doesn't grab me in the first hour, I'm not in it.
So you have to play that game until you get the ship, because that's when it grabs you.
No ship.
Yeah. If you don't get the ship, it's just another Assassin's Creed game, and I'm kind of done with that. But once you get the ship, you are a pirate swinging through the rigging, diving onto other people's ships, stabbing them in the eyeball, and taking their booty.
It looks good. That part does look fun. I've seen some videos.
It's pretty good. Did you have a Nidhogg? You look like you might have a Nidhogg question.
No, I didn't. I asked all my questions. I was going to ask what's with the name.
So when you get to the far end, then you get eaten by the Nidhogg, and the Nidhogg is a giant pink-looking worm that flies through the air. It's a real weird game. Like it looks like you know how Fez looks like the way you remember Super Nintendo games looking?
Yeah, sure.
Like it has like the limited, not limited palette and the resolution and all that stuff that they totally cheat on. This looks like you remember Atari 2600 games looking.
Oh no.
So it's all it's all like blocky big giant pixels, and the arms move. I'm I'm describing it terribly.
Okay.
The backgrounds are all look like photorealistic stuff pulled out of like weird textures. It has a real unique visual style. The music is great. It's by a guy named Daedalus, or band named Daedalus.
A chiptune kind of thing.
Chiptune kind of thing. It is. I looked at it. I was like, this is right up Jeremy Williams' alley.
Sounds great.
He would be into this. It seems like the kind of thing you could pick up and play with pretty much anybody.
I can't wait to find out why I want to be eaten by the Nidhogg.
Well, because that means you win.
Right. Oh.
It's simple, Jeremy.
Sorry.
Good God, man.
I'm old.
So I don't know if Norm's going to get back. Maybe we'll talk about her next week. But I guess that'll do it for us this week. For Norman Chan, I'm Will Smith. Jeremy Williams, thank you for coming out.
Thanks.
Anything you'd like to plug? Hey, when's your Kickstarter? Are you ready to... No, not ready to talk.
I'm getting ready to... And by the next time I'm on here, it might be live.
I want to buy a pixel wall. I want to buy the grid.
It's called the Game Frame.
Sorry, the game frame.
And hopefully you'll be able to do that.
Soon.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, if the Kickstarter is successful, absolutely.
Excellent. Yeah. Well, thank you, sir. And we'll be back next Thursday with another episode of This Is Only Test. We're recording Still Untitled tomorrow, so we will have Still Untitled back next week for reals this time. And that'll do it for us. We'll see you guys later.